Chapter 163. This year's All-Star Rookie Challenge was different from previous years. In previous years, it was always the first-year players against the second-year players. This was the tradition of the NBA. But to be honest, it was always so unintentional and boring. The most important thing was that sometimes, the talents of the first-year players and the second-year players were different. Sometimes it wasn't very intense, but it was very interesting to watch. Ever since Adam Xiaohua became the president of the NBA, he had a lot of plans for the restructuring of the NBA. The Rookie Challenge was the first change he made. The original Rookie Challenge was between the first-year players and the second-year players. This year he changed it to the U.S. team against the international team. Among the first-year and second-year players in the NBA, the U.S. national players would be selected to face the international players. This way the game would have more confrontations. It would also show the future strength of the U.S. Basketball Conference and the International Basketball Conference. Sure enough, after his restructuring, the ticket sales for this year's Rookie Challenge were much better than before. The head coach of the international team this year was the assistant coach of the Eastern Conference's best team, the Hawks, Kenny Atkinson. The head coach of the U.S. team was the assistant coach of the Warriors, King Terry. It had to be admitted that the Warriors were very ambitious recently. This could be seen from the coaching staff of the Xing duo. King Terry had been the head coach of the Phoenix Suns in the past, and his results were not bad. He had even made it to the Western Finals. But now he was willing to be an assistant coach in the Warriors. It was clear that the Warriors were very attractive. While the players were warming up, the big screen in the stadium introduced the members of the two teams. On the U.S. team, there were the 76ers' best rookie last year, Michael Carter-Williams and Michael Carter-Williams. When these three names were put together, it was really intimidating. There was the Magic's current outside core, Odubora, the Jazz's main power forward, Trey Burke, Pop from the Pistons, Zach Lavin from the Minnesota Timberwolves, Muhammad, who was also from the Timberwolves, Nolan Noel, the 76ers' top draft pick last year, who was only selected as the 6th pick, Mason Plumlee, the second of the three Plumlee brothers from the Brooklyn Nets, Cody Zeller, one of the three Zeller brothers from the Charlotte Bobcats. No, they had changed their name to the Charlotte Hornets this year. There was also the Magic's power forward, Peyton, whose hair was cooler than his skills. On the international team, there was this year's top draft pick, Andrew Wiggins from the Minnesota Timberwolves, who was traded for Love by the Cavaliers. He was a Canadian. There was also Steven Adams from the Oklahoma City Thunder, and the Bucks' Greek freak Giannis Antetokounmpo, also known as Alphabet Bro. This person was very popular in the NBA recently. He used a three-step layup from outside the three-point line and occupied a lot of the screen. There were also the players here, Bojan Bogdanovic of the Nets, Gorgui Dieng of the Timberwolves, the Jazz's third potential power forward, Dante Exum, the Bulls' riffraff Nikola Mirotic, the Jazz's inside player Rudy Gobert, the Atlanta Hawks' Blondie Schroeder, and Kelly Olynyk, the Boston Celtics player who had met Jiang Hai once. To be exact, he had a ball game with Jiang Hai, the Boston Celtics player, Kelly Olynyk. Looking at these people doing warm-up shots on the court, Jiang Hai sat on the sidelines and kept taking photos of the people on the court with his mobile phone. For him, the game had not yet started. Instead of watching here, it was better to take some photos and post them to his circle of friends. That way he would have a lot of shares. Just as Jiang Hai was feeling happy, a face suddenly appeared in his camera. "It's you?" Looking at this face, Jiang Hai was also shocked. He resisted the urge to punch him and took a closer look at the owner of this face. Then he frowned because he also knew this guy. Just the day before yesterday he had some conflicts with the bastard Justin Bieber. Looking at Jiang Hai in front of him, Justin Bieber said with an unhappy face, "I also want to say how it's you." Originally he was a diehard basketball fan. A few years ago, when his reputation was still good, he was invited to the All-Star game. In fact, if it wasn't for his bad reputation, the NBA would have been very willing to promote with him. After all, it was good publicity. But now the NBA didn't want to have anything to do with him. The All-Star game wouldn't invite him again, but he still liked basketball. Even if he had to pay for it, he would still come to watch the game. Especially since this guy was a patriotic guy. With a Canadian like Andrew Wiggins here, it wasn't a big deal for him to be here to support him. Looking at Bieber's big face, Jiang Hai gave him the middle finger and then continued to play with his mobile phone. He didn't want to have anything to do with this guy. This guy was really a bad person. "You're also here to watch the game? Can you understand it?" However, just because Jiang Hai ignored him didn't mean that he ignored Jiang Hai. Looking at Jiang Hai sitting there, he also moved to Jiang Hai's side and said to Jiang Hai with a proud face, I know it better than you. Jiang Hai looked at this guy and said with an unhappy face. Know it better than me? Hey, you're really good at bragging. Do Asians also play basketball? Don't you only produce centers? Don't tell me that with your height you're also a center. Looking at Jiang Hai, Justin Bieber said with a happy face. Indeed, in the past few years Wuxia had cultivated the most players into the NBA in Asia. However, there was only one person who directly played, and that was Yao Ming. Even if Emperor Yi had some outstanding performances in the NBA, it was only occasionally. If his defense improved a little, he could also be a rotation player. After all, his explosive scoring power was still good. However, the problem was that he was not a core player and his defense was below average. In the end, it was difficult for him to return to China after the end of his rookie season. In addition to these two, the other Asian players, which could also be said to be domestic players, couldn't stand firm in the NBA. Although Sun Yu and Coach Ba got 2 championship rings in the end, it was basically a victory for them. For Europeans and Americans, the Asians' basketball skills were not good. It seemed that this was a very common thing. If you're not convinced, let's play a game. Hearing Justin Bieber's words, Jiang Hai also put down the phone in his hand. Although he admitted that Huaxia's team might not be able to beat the American team, he was a Canadian. What was there to be cocky about? Besides, even if Huaxia's team couldn't beat the Americans, it didn't mean that Jiang Hai couldn't beat them. He was so strong that even he felt scared. Okay. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Justin Bieber also looked at him. That day at the nightclub he was in a bad mood. Why did he have to apologize to him when he was beaten? Now that he had a chance to teach Jiang Hai a lesson, he wouldn't give up. You set a time. Hearing that he agreed, Jiang Hai didn't beat around the bush and said directly. Seeing that Jiang Hai agreed, Justin Bieber's face also brimmed with a smile. Then let's play now. Now, let's go out and play? Hearing his words, Jiang Hai froze for a moment. Don't watch the game? Why go out? We'll play here. Seeing Jiang Hai's surprised expression, Justin Bieber smiled. Then, regardless of whether Jiang Hai was willing or not, he stood up from his seat and went straight to the left side of the court. Hey Andrew, you guys take a break first. I want to borrow your court. I'm going to have a bullfight with a guy. Regardless of Jiang Hai's stunned gaze, Justin Bieber walked straight to Andrew Wiggins and said proudly. As the pride of Canadians, Andrew Wiggins was naturally very familiar with Justin Bieber. Although he did a lot of disgusting things and was boycotted in the United States and Canada, he was still a national treasure, so Andrew Wiggins had a good relationship with him. This I have to ask the coach. Hearing Justin Bieber's words, Andrew smiled slightly awkwardly. Although he was this year's top scorer, he was still just a rookie. At this time, he naturally had to ask the coach's opinion. Fortunately, their coach was the assistant coach of the Hawks. Everyone knew that the head coach of the Hawks, Hornacek, was under Popovich, so the character of their team's coaching staff was not much different from that of the Spurs. Basically, they were the kind of people who valued the regular season and the playoffs more than life and death. But when it came to the All-Star game, which many people paid attention to, they almost didn't care. The super core of the Spurs, the most powerful forward in the history of the NBA, Tim Duncan, had only shared the All-Star MVP award with O'Neal in 1900. After that, for many years he was just a bystander. Therefore, when the coach found out that Justin Bieber was going to play, he shrugged his shoulders to show that he didn't care. Since he didn't care, the other players were also happy to take a break. Seeing that half of the court had been cleared, Andrew Wiggins smiled and stuffed the basketball into Justin Bieber's arms. He winked at him and said, "Then I'll leave it to you." Holding the basketball, Justin Bieber turned his head and looked at Jiang Hai, who was still in a daze, and shouted, "Hey, come on up." Now Jiang Hai was really in a daze. He really wanted to teach this guy a lesson on the basketball court, but he really didn't think that it would be on the NBA All-Star game. For a moment he was a little numb. Looking at Justin Bieber, who was constantly waving his arms on the court, Moses Adams leaned over to Jiang Hai and whispered to Jiang Hai, "Hey boss, are you reliable? If I said that I don't know, how would you feel?" Hearing Moses Adams' words, Jiang Hai whispered back, "Then what do we do now?" Chapter 164. What did it mean to ride a tiger and have no way to back down? What did it mean to have no choice but to release the arrow when it was knocked? What did it mean to not seek death and not die? Of course the last sentence was for Justin Bieber. However, Jiang Hai did feel that it was a little troublesome now. This was a personal grudge, a duel in front of tens of thousands of people. This was something that made one feel overwhelmed. Jiang Hai was in a dilemma now. If he said that he couldn't go up, would he still want his face? However, if he said that, he really felt a little guilty and afraid. He didn't know what to do. "Hey, come up. You're not afraid, are you? Seeing Jiang Hai's hesitation, Justin Bieber kept waving his arms and provoking Jiang Hai to come up. He even deliberately dribbled the ball on the court and played some tricks. The audience on the sidelines didn't know what was going on at this time. They only saw Justin Bieber constantly making some provocative moves on the court, as if he was asking someone to play basketball. Following the principle of watching a show and not being afraid of making it big, they also booed Bieber. Listening to these boos, Jiang Hai felt that his legs were getting weaker and weaker. This was the first time in Jiang Hai's life that he was so timid. Following the principle that he would rather die standing than live sitting down, Jiang Hai gritted his teeth, slapped his leg hard and said in a low voice, "F***ck, so be it." Then he stood up with his legs and walked onto the court. Seeing Jiang Hai stand up, Justin Bieber also clapped happily. The cameras on the sidelines also wanted to know who Bieber's opponent was. They also gave Jiang Hai a close-up, but unfortunately Jiang Hai wasn't a star and he wasn't very handsome. This made the audience on the sidelines somewhat disappointed. They originally thought that it would be a battle between stars, but now it seemed to be a one-man show by Bieber. "Hey guys, it looks like there's a bullfight going on down there. I didn't expect there to be desserts to watch before the competition starts." Because the match had not started yet, the people in the broadcast booth upstairs were also fiddling with the wires. The 4 commentators of TNT were also chatting or playing with their phones. Kenny Smith, who was sitting in the corner, looked up when he heard some commotion below. As a result, he happened to see the bullfight that was going on the field. "Me? Is there a bullfight?" Hearing that there was a show to watch, Charles Buckley and O'Neal immediately ran over. The 2 behemoths instantly pushed Kenny Smith aside and leaned against the glass to watch. "Looks like Justin Bieber is causing trouble again." On the other side, Uncle Emmy also walked over with a smile. He glanced at the arena below. It would be nice to be able to watch the show before the live broadcast. "Hey Shaq, I don't think I've seen this person before. Is he a Wuxia celebrity? You always go to Wuxia. You should know him." Looking at Jiang Hai, who was doing a simple warm-up on the field, Charles Buckley tried hard to recall. "You shouldn't know this guy." He couldn't help but look at Shaq O'Neal behind him and asked with some confusion, "I don't think I know him either." "Whatever, let's watch. By the way, Charles, guess who will win?" Looking at the 2 people below, O'Neal shook his head. He really didn't know Jiang Hai. Of course, the number of Wuxia celebrities he knew was limited. "Although Bieber is a naughty kid, I still think he will win." Shaking his head, Charles Buckley said with certainty. Seeing that Charles Buckley actually guessed Bieber, O'Neal was a little speechless. He immediately said to him, "F***ck, why don't you guess the mysterious man? You know, you can tell from his skin color that he is from Asia. Maybe he is from Wuxia and knows martial arts. If he is from Japan, maybe he knows ninjutsu or something." Unfortunately, Charles Buckley was not stupid. He glanced at this guy and said to him, "You think so highly of him. Guess he will win." "Although Bieber is a naughty kid, I still think he will win." But after hearing Barker's words, O'Neal shrugged and said regretfully. Then the 2 of them laughed cheekily. However, even though the 2 of them laughed very cheekily, it also proved that Justin Bieber, as a basketball enthusiast, was indeed not bad. At least on the street court, he was a half-thigh existence. Otherwise they would not have guessed that he was the one. But no matter what these people thought, Jiang Hai, who was on the court at this time, had also finished warming up. After casually throwing his jacket to Moses Adams, he stood on the court and looked at Justin Bieber, who was still dribbling and showing off his skills. He said, "How do you play? It's very simple. Don't you know the most basic bullfighting? 1 person attacks, 1 person defends. Continue to attack if you score. If you don't score or go out of bounds, trade the right to serve. Whoever scores 7 points first wins." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Justin Bieber also said quickly, "Then let's start." Jiang Hai said and walked to the free throw line. Seeing Jiang Hai's action, Justin Bieber was stunned. Holding the basketball, Justin Bieber looked at Jiang Hai and said loudly, "Aren't you going to throw a 3-pointer to decide who will attack first?" "No, you attack first. Otherwise you won't even be able to touch the ball." Jiang Hai was still very confident in his own strength. After saying this lightly, he casually stood at the free throw line and waited for Justin Bieber to attack. Damn it. Seeing Jiang Hai deal with him so casually, Justin Bieber's eyes turned red. He cursed under his breath. After washing the ball, he slowly dribbled the ball toward the 3-point line. This game will be over very quickly. Watching the game on the court, Olenek, who was off the court, said softly while drinking the viscous, mustard-like drink to recover his strength. Olenek was also a player from Canada, but his relationship with Justin Bieber was not as good as that of Andrew Wiggins. After all, he was the top scorer. Yeah, although Justin Bieber is not a good person, his level is still not bad. This game will probably end very quickly. Hearing his voice, Mirotic, who was sitting next to him, also said with a smile, "No, you're mistaken. I mean, that guy will win." When he heard Mirotic's words, Olenek shook his head and pointed his finger at Jiang Hai, who was still on the field. He obviously still remembered the existence that their coach had called a monster. Hearing Olenek's confident words, Mirotic didn't know how to continue. He could only take it as Olenek said it casually. He raised his head and looked at the court. "I'm coming." At this time, Justin Bieber had also dribbled to the three-point line. After saying this to Jiang Hai, he suddenly accelerated and rushed to the left side of Jiang Hai. Jiang Hai didn't even bother to extend his hand. He took a step and blocked in front of him. All of this was actually within Justin Bieber's calculations. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly. He instantly changed direction and rushed to the right. But the moment he completed his move, Jiang Hai seemed to ignore gravity. He took another step to the right and appeared in front of him. Although he was blocked twice in a row, Justin Bieber was not discouraged. Instead, he moved along with his center of gravity and made a huge pulling motion. He turned to the left again, then took a step and was about to turn around again. But Jiang Hai's body appeared in front of him again at this time. Then Justin Bieber jumped around like a giant grasshopper, but no matter how he jumped, he couldn't leave Jiang Hai's side. He was really being watched. Jiang Hai strolled around like he was taking a stroll, but every time he appeared, he would block Justin Bieber's path. Seeing this scene, the boos and cheers of the audience became louder and louder. The pressure on Jiang Hai was now all transferred to Justin Bieber. This made Bieber more and more anxious. Finally, when Jiang Hai blocked in front of him again, he was a little unhappy. He leaned directly against Jiang Hai and wanted to take a backward jump shot. "I don't believe that you can interfere with me when I make a move." When his body flew into the air, Justin Bieber's face also showed a special smile. But at this moment, a black shadow suddenly rose in front of him. The whole body directly blocked between him and the basket. So high. Seeing Jiang Hai's jump, not to mention the audience on the sidelines, even O'Neal and the others on the second floor were stunned. Who knew that such an unknown guy would have such strength? Looking at Jiang Hai's smiling face in the air, Justin Bieber was also stunned. He subconsciously pushed the basketball in his hand, but Jiang Hai directly smashed the basketball out of the sidelines like a volleyball. "One attack is over. It's my turn." After landing again, Jiang Hai looked at Justin Bieber, who was a little scared out of his wits, and chuckled. "With this level of skill, he still dares to play with me. This guy is really looking for death. Gulp, let's do it." Justin Bieber swallowed hard. Even if he lost, he didn't want to lose. He roared and said to Jiang Hai. Some nosy fans had already picked up the basketball that Jiang Hai had just slapped away. Jiang Hai also walked to the center circle and pushed the ball to Justin Bieber. This was a wash. Justin Bieber also slapped the ball back. But he didn't expect Jiang Hai to catch the ball and shoot. Yes, remember Jiang Hai's shooting range? It covered the entire half of the court. If he shot here, it was no different from shooting a two-pointer. As Jiang Hai's wrist shook, the basketball reflected Justin Bieber's surprised, puzzled, and confused eyes. It plunged into the opposite basket. The whole audience was silent for a moment. Chapter 165. It's coming? When he saw Jiang Hai making a move, Olenek held his face and said indifferently, "Don't worry. It's coming? What's coming? Oh my God, what kind of trick is this?" Mirotic, who was still a little confused at first, was still a little puzzled after hearing Olenek's words. However, when he saw Jiang Hai's shot go straight into the basket like a guided missile, he couldn't help but be shocked and almost bit his tongue. In fact, he wasn't the only one who almost bit his tongue. Originally, when these people saw Jiang Hai's defense just now, they were a little confused because they realized that Jiang Hai's speed, strength, jumping ability, and the most terrifying thing was his balance. All of these were extremely strong. It was as if he was playing, compressing Justin Bieber's space of movement to the extreme. And now, Jiang Hai's move made them extremely surprised. They didn't know how to describe it. Mirotic opened his mouth wide in horror. He wanted to say something but he couldn't. After a long while, he muttered softly, "This guy, he must have guessed it? Guessed it? His shooting percentage is as high as 90% without any defense. I don't think it's possible to guess it. Moreover, he hasn't shown his most terrifying side yet." Olenek touched his face and said with lingering fear as he thought about the blow he suffered that day. He hasn't shown it yet?" Hearing his words, Miritich didn't know how to continue this time. You're really lucky. Again. At this time, Justin Bieber on the court had also recovered from the shock just now. He swallowed hard, picked up the basketball that rolled back to his side and threw it to Jiang Hai. After Jiang Hai received the ball, he naturally did it again. The same position, the same angle, and even the sound of the basket hitting the basket was the same. With another schwa sound, the basketball hit the basket again. Seeing this, the audience, who were already confused, became even more confused. After being stunned for about 10 seconds, the entire stadium exploded. Everyone was talking crazily about when the luck ball could become a regular weapon. People who were not very familiar with Jiang Hai were discussing him crazily. But unfortunately, Jiang Hai was not a star. Secondly, he had never been on TV. Thirdly, he was not a celebrity or a founder. Therefore, even if they searched the internet, they couldn't find any news about Jiang Hai. However, this didn't stop these people from admiring Jiang Hai. A person who can throw 3 points in the half court as if he was throwing 2 points? What a terrifying existence. I haven't said start yet. I haven't washed the ball. Why are you in such a hurry? Hearing the buzzing in his ears was like a fly's buzzing. Justin Bieber was at a loss. He looked at Jiang Hai with a serious face. Then it doesn't count. It's up to you. He shrugged. It was just a ball. He didn't care. Who cares? Again start. Seeing Jiang Hai's indifferent attitude, Justin Bieber was furious. He picked up the ball again and threw it to Jiang Hai. Then he yelled start. Just before he yelled, he had already rushed toward Jiang Hai. He wanted to block Jiang Hai's shot. But to be honest, Jiang Hai didn't want to shoot now. Looking at Justin Bieber rushing over, Jiang Hai gently dribbled the basketball and then stepped with his right foot. In Justin Bieber's eyes, Jiang Hai almost instantly turned into a shadow. Like a storm, he directly blew past him. The loud sound even made his face hurt. By the time he reacted, Jiang Hai had already broken through him like he was taking a stroll. What a fast first step. As a former NBA player, Kenny Smith, who was known for his speed, was shocked when he saw Jiang Hai's first step. Jiang Hai's first step was even faster than Wade at his peak. From above, Jiang Hai was like a sharp knife. His body flashed and he had already passed Justin Bieber. After a few dribbles, he had already rushed into the three-point line. When he entered the three-point line, Jiang Hai had already picked up the ball. One false step, 2 firm steps. The moment his right foot stepped on the free throw line, he flew straight up as if he had been catapulted. The audience sitting in the first row could clearly see that when he flew up, his head was almost above the height of the basket. He really flew high and far. He even had the leisure to step down and change hands in the air. Then he grabbed the basketball with his right hand, raised it high, and smashed it heavily into the basket. When he came down from the basket, the audience in the stadium felt as if they had been punched in the chest. It took a few seconds for them to react, and then they burst into a roar that shook the sky. Good physical fitness. Jumping from the free throw line with one foot and changing hands with the tomahawk? Ahem, Zach Lavin, are we reliable tomorrow? Looking at Jiang Hai's attack, the fans on the sidelines were more surprised and cheered wildly. The NBA players off the court were a little dumbfounded. The laymen were there for the excitement, while the experts were there for the skill. They could see that there was a monster living in Jiang Hai's body, which did not look very strong. Even LeBron James, who was known as the #1 monster in the NBA, did not have such a hard strength when he was at his peak. Especially Audiobook and Zach Lavin, who were going to participate in the dunk contest tomorrow. After the two of them looked at each other, Audiobook carefully swallowed a mouthful of saliva and said to Zach Lavin. Zach Lavin curled his lips. He did not know what to say. He had no problem jumping from the free throw line for a dunk. He even looked better than Jiang Hai when he switched hands with the tomahawk. However, when these two things were combined, the difficulty was not as simple as 1 + 1. After moving his neck a little, Jiang Hai smiled as he took the ball and walked in front of Justin Bieber, who was already in a daze. He stuffed the basketball into his arms and smiled as he gestured to. 2 balls, continue. Oh, okay. Seeing that Jiang Hai did not intend to let him go, Justin Bieber licked his lips and said stiffly. Then he washed the ball again, but this time he was a little confused because he did not know if he should rush again. However, even if he did not rush, it did not mean that Jiang Hai would let him go. Without saying anything, he started again. This time he was not only fast but also continuously fast. The speed at which he dribbled the ball was even faster than the King of Hell, Devin Harris, at his peak. He rushed straight towards Justin Bieber. Looking at Jiang Hai, who was constantly enlarging in his pupils, Justin Bieber was really frightened. He really thought that Jiang Hai was going to hit him. Just as Jiang Hai's speed was getting faster and faster, and he was about to lie on the ground to avoid it, Jiang Hai's body stopped less than 5 centimeters in front of him. The inertia and gravity seemed to have no effect on Jiang Hai's body at all. Looking at Justin Bieber's sweat dripping down because of fear, Jiang Hai's mouth revealed a devilish smile. Who asked this guy to find trouble with me for no reason? I'll teach him a lesson and let him know how to behave in the future. The moment that smile was deeply imprinted in Justin Bieber's mind, Jiang Hai's body started again. It was a faster speed than before, and he flashed into the inside line in an instant. Before the reasonable collision zone, Jiang Hai's body soared into the air. At the moment of takeoff, after 2 consecutive turns, a double straight line slam dunk once again caused an uproar in the entire stadium. Wow, what is this? What is this? Don't tell me this guy is unorthodox. I feel that my face is red and swollen. Seeing Jiang Hai score the ball again, Charles Buckley on the other side had already roared loudly. His knees are as hard as steel. That kind of sudden stop and sudden move, I feel numb just thinking about it. As a former representative of the speed players, Kenny Smith shuddered and said with some lingering fear, that kind of sudden stop was really terrifying. If the person in front of him at this time was not Justin Bieber, who had long given up, but a defensive player, that move could even break the defensive player's leg. Of course, if the other side did not follow but used their eyes to guard, then it was a different story. Compared to his sudden stop and sudden move, the subsequent 720-degree slam dunk did not seem so important. This monster, how do you know him? Looking at Jiang Hai, who had picked up the basketball again, Mirotich's eyes could not leave Jiang Hai. Although Jiang Hai only scored 3 shots, the things that those 3 shots showed were really important. That frighteningly powerful long throw, that frighteningly powerful first step, that frighteningly powerful defensive prediction and body balance, and that frighteningly powerful ability to stop suddenly. Could be said that if this guy really entered the NBA, it would be his era. There would be no need for any foreshadowing. There would be no need for him to fight for power because he would be the best. However, he was now very curious about how Olenek knew him. He came to our team to try out, but then Mr. Ainge gave him a short 10-day contract and he left. Olenek shrugged his shoulders. To be honest, Olenek respected Danny Ainge quite a bit. However, based on this matter, he was really dissatisfied with Danny Ainge. How could he let such an overlord go just like that? He was so retarded that it was incomprehensible. A short 10-day contract? Ha. Forget it, let's not talk about him. I feel that our game will receive even less attention. Mirotic smiled awkwardly. He could only give Danny Ainge a thumbs up in his heart. He could only say that this kind of person had done well by giving him a short 10-day contract. Otherwise, if Jiang Hai really entered the NBA, it would be their doom. Attention? What does this have to do with us? When he heard Mirotic's words, Olenek asked curiously. Hey, I'm in the starting lineup. I'm in the starting lineup. It turned out that even if he was in the starting lineup, not many people would remember him. Let's continue. At this time, Jiang Hai picked up the ball again. He walked in front of Justin Bieber, who was already in a daze. He handed the basketball over with a smile on his face. In Bieber's eyes, it was a devil's smile. Chapter 166. I have a stomachache. I'll go to the bathroom first. Wait for me when I come back. You must wait for me. Looking at the basketball that Jiang Hai handed over, Justin Bieber was a million times unwilling to take it. However, it was not his style to admit defeat. Therefore, he rolled his eyes and decided to escape by taking a dump. He did not give Jiang Hai time to react at all. He had already slapped away Jiang Hai's hand and ran away quickly. Although the booing along the way was deafening, he only had one thought at this time, and that was to get out of here quickly. He could not stand it anymore. Shoo. Looking at him running away, the audience erupted. Almost everyone was giving him the middle finger. Some of the people close to him were cursing, but this didn't slow him down. Instead, he sped up. Hey, he's really shameless. Looking at Bieber's fleeing appearance, Jiang Hai chuckled and slowly walked back to his position. As for the basketball in his hand, he threw it behind him. The basketball was the same as the previous 2 long-range shots. As if it had a guidance system, it went straight into the basket. Wow, YM. Seeing Jiang Hai shoot the ball again, the audience did not have the leisure to care about Justin Bieber at this time. Instead, they shouted loudly. The so-called YM was the abbreviation of Yellow Man. Jiang Hai was not a celebrity. Secondly, he did not have an encyclopedia. Naturally, these people did not know what Jiang Hai was called. They could only use Jiang Hai's skin as an abbreviation to call him. This was not a race. In fact, it was just like in the United States, it did not matter to call a black person black. Jiang Hai had been here for a long time, so he did not care. He just smiled and waved to the crowd. Then he sat down in front of Moses Adams again. Seeing that Jiang Hai was not going to play again, the audience here was very dissatisfied. However, they were dissatisfied that Jiang Hai was not going to play. Anyway, he did not rely on these people to make money. Wow, boss, you are really strong. Have you ever thought about playing in the NBA? How about I be your manager? Moses Adams said excitedly in Jiang Hai's ear when he heard the cheers. Come on, don't you know what kind of meat the cattle in my manor are? Do I need to go to the NBA? Rolling his eyes, Jiang Hai said with a chuckle. Moses Adams also smiled when he heard Jiang Hai's words. Indeed, he knew how much potential Jiang Hai's manor had. Otherwise, he would not have stayed by Jiang Hai's side and flattered him so much. This guy now raises 20,000 cows. According to the calculation that a cow can be sold for $50,000, that is $1 billion. If it is sold for $100,000, that is $2 billion. This is just a year's amount. The most powerful player in the NBA, LeBron James, has played for more than 10 years and has not earned $2 billion. Compared with Jiang Hai's manor business, the player's scope is indeed too small. After confirming that Jiang Hai would not play again, the players on both sides also came to the court to warm up. However, unlike just now when they were showing off their skills and chatting, these people would always look at Jiang Hai from time to time because they knew that there was a monster sitting there. Even in the TNT studio, Charles Buckley, O'Neal, and the others were talking about Jiang Hai. It seemed that Mirotic was right about one thing. The attention they were receiving was indeed decreasing. But now who would pay attention to this? Even the head coaches of the two teams had their eyes set on Jiang Hai. Before the game started, the two came to talk to Jiang Hai, hoping that Jiang Hai could join their teams. But whether it was the Warriors or the Hawks, Jiang Hai had no interest in them. That was because the manor was the most important thing. Seeing Jiang Hai's firm refusal, the two sighed. In fact, they were just thinking about it. If they could really get Jiang Hai in their hands, then it would naturally be the best. But if Jiang Hai was in the hands of the other team, then they would not be able to sleep at night. Soon, the first official game of the 2015 NBA All-Star Game began. The starting lineup of the two teams was Payton, Oladipo, Bop, Noel, and Zeller. The world team was Schroeder, Wiggins, Antetokounmpo, Mirotic, and Gobert. There were some sparks between the two teams. After all, one team represented the United States, and the other team represented the world team. This was also what Xiaohua wanted to see. Compared to previous years, the competition was indeed a lot more serious. In the end, the world team defeated the United States team 121 to 112. The total score of the two teams also set the lowest record since 2006. In the end, the world team's top scorer, Andrew Wiggins, won the honor of the Rookie All-Star Challenge's Most Valuable Player. After that, the Hall of Fame press conference had nothing to do with Jiang Hai and the rest of the audience. After the match ended, Jiang Hai and Moses Adams returned to the hotel in a car. But at this time, on the internet, there were some videos that weren't very high definition that dominated the entire online world. The videos were of today's All-Star Rookie Challenge. However, no one was watching the actual game. They were watching the one-on-one game between Jiang Hai and Bieber. The bullfight was very short, only about 2 minutes, but it was exciting. Could be said that every minute, every second was exciting. Regardless of whether they liked basketball or not, after watching Jiang Hai's performance, they were all shocked and amazed. All kinds of comments swept over. Some people suspected that this was arranged by the NBA and that Jiang Hai was hanging from wires. Some people suspected that this was a movie. Some people stood up for Jiang Hai. Of course, there were also some brainless fans who scolded Jiang Hai. As an international star, Justin Bieber's popularity was not worse than some of the top NBA stars. It was even better. When the news spread back to China, it was already afternoon. When the first person clicked on the video, the fire in China burned even faster. However, this had nothing to do with Jiang Hai. At this time, he had already returned to his room, satisfied. After taking a good shower, he lay down on the big bed and fell asleep. For him, today was a very happy day. It was also a day to have fun. That was all. The next day was the second day of the All-Star weekend. It was also the day when the All-Star game began. The first shooting star was dominated by the Bosch team for the third time. It was estimated that Xiaohua would have to consider whether or not to have this game again next year. However, when Jiang Hai appeared on the sidelines, he attracted a lot of attention. After all, in terms of long-range shooting, Jiang Hai seemed to be better than Bosch. However, Jiang Hai was not going to fight for fame today. was useless to him. The shooting star was won by the Bosch team. The skill challenge was won by the rocket crazy Bufuli. The three-point competition was won by the star of the Warriors, Stephen Curry. The dunk competition was won by the rookie of the Timberwolves, Zach Lavin. This guy's jump was really scary. Of course, there was still a big gap between him and Jiang Hai. After the second day, it was the third day of the All-Star Game. It was also the main event of the All-Star Game. The starting lineup for this year's NBA All-Star Game was the forward line of the Eastern Conference. It was LeBron James, Cameron Anthony, and Pau Gasol of the Bulls. After his sister-in-law left the Lakers, his performance for the Bulls was really surprising. The defensive line was composed of John Wall and Kerry Lowry, who had replaced Wade as the starter at the last moment because of Justin Bieber. The starting lineup for the Western Conference was a little strange because there was one center and four guards. It was not arranged according to position. It was his sister-in-law, Chris Paul, Klay Thompson, James Harden, and Stephen Curry. The first half of the All-Star Game was the first half of fun. It was mainly about fun and performance. There were many highlights. Everyone put their energy into the second half. Of course, the fans had a tacit understanding about this. In fact, at the main event, it was not just about watching the game. They could also enjoy a lot of singing and dancing performances. There were also many stars who would show themselves on this stage. First, it was to promote the NBA. Second, it was to promote themselves to the NBA audience. This was a win-win situation. Many people were willing to do this. Moreover, where was this? This was New York. When it came to Starlight, only Los Angeles could beat it. There were a lot of stars performing on the stage this night, but almost none of them were famous enough to be called by Jiang Hai. The one who performed the most was Ariana Grande. She was a new generation of female singers in the United States, but Jiang Hai did not know her. There was also Christina Aguilera. She was a mentor of The Voice of America, but Jiang Hai did not know her either. Generally speaking, when he watched the All-Star Game at home, Jiang Hai would change the channel when it was time to sing. This was because he was not very interested in singing, especially English songs. He did not understand them before. Now he understood, but he did not have the habit of listening to these things. Now that he heard it live, it was not bad. Just as Jiang Hai was watching the girls singing and dancing on stage, Moses Adams went out and came back. "Boss, are you interested in attending the banquet after the All-Star Game?" Moses Adams asked in a low voice as he looked at Jiang Hai. "Banquet? What do you mean?" When he heard Moses Adams' words, Jiang Hai also withdrew his gaze. "It means what it means on the surface." Shrugging his shoulders, Moses Adams explained to Jiang Hai that the NBA All-Star Game was not only watched by ordinary people, there were also some social elites and celebrities. After the All-Star Game ended, the NBA would hold a banquet every year. These people who were voted to become All-Stars would attend. It felt like they were selling their clothes. In fact, the league wanted to use these players as a bridge to get to know some of the celebrities or rich people who like basketball so as to obtain investment and support. Of course, with the NBA's slow promotion, they were now not short of money. The banquet was now more of a banquet to show off their status. It was a place for the rich to exchange what they needed. Of course, it was also a place that girls who wanted to become famous looked forward to. Chapter 167. The All-Star Game ended in an uproar. In the end, Russell Westbrook, the backup point guard of the Western Conference, became the MVP of the year with a score of 41 points, 5 rebounds, 1 assist, and 3 steals. The 41 points was also the second highest score in the history of the All-Star Game, second only to Zhang the Great's 42 points. However, this was still very scary. When Russell Westbrook raised the trophy that symbolized the MVP of the NBA All-Star Game, the New York All-Star Game officially came to an end. For some ordinary people, they could go back to sleep now. But for the celebrities who participated in the All-Star Game, there was a special banquet that they had to attend. Of course, it was not clear whether it was a banquet or a banquet because the people who could attend were all rich and powerful. Even the players were willing to interact with the rich to see if there was a chance to make money. Jiang Hai also had a chance to attend this banquet. Of course, this was inseparable from Moses Adams's connections. In addition to his connections, Jiang Hai also needed to show his strength. He needed to donate $1 million to the NBA's charity. This could be considered a stepping stone. The $1 million could be used as a tax deduction. The tax deduction rate was 1-to-1, so Jiang Hai did not care much about donating $1 million. After all, he had to pay the $1 million in April. Now that he had a chance to attend the banquet, it was a good choice. After paying the $1 million, Jiang Hai stepped into the venue of the NBA banquet. However, after entering, Jiang Hai regretted it. The people who attended the banquet, even if they were black, were all dressed in suits. He was the only one who was dressed in outdoor attire. It was indeed a little awkward and degrading. Jiang Hai felt that the waiters here were dressed more formally than him. Most importantly, although it was called a banquet, it was actually a buffet banquet. Most of the people were holding a glass of wine and chatting just like what he saw on TV. There was nothing to eat at the cold restaurant. Isn't it a little degrading for me to wear this? Jiang Hai whispered as he looked at Moses Adams next to him. Boss, I told you a long time ago, but you don't like to wear it. Boss, it's up to you. I'll go over there first. I have a few clients to meet. Moses Adams patted Jiang Hai's shoulder and said with a smile. In fact, even if they wanted to buy a suit now, it was too late. After all, the All-Star Game started at 8 o'clock in the evening. The All-Star Game lasted nearly 3 hours. It would be 11 o'clock by the time they arrived at the banquet. In the 24-hour shop, there were obviously no suits that could be used to attend a banquet of this level. Therefore, instead of buying some random brands, it was better to let Jiang Hai wear this. It was more unique and eye-catching. He did tell Jiang Hai a long time ago that he had to wear formal attire when attending certain events. However, Jiang Hai was used to it. To be honest, he didn't like formal attire. It could be said that he hated it because even moving his arms was restricted. This was something that he couldn't understand. But now that he was dressed like this, to be honest, he was indeed a little embarrassed. Everyone in the room glanced at Jiang Hai from time to time when they saw Jiang Hai arrive. In this hall full of suits and gowns, Jiang Hai stood out. If it wasn't for the fact that tens of thousands of people had seen him a few days ago, Jiang Hai might have fled in defeat. But even so, he still felt a little guilty. He picked up a glass of wine and walked to the long table to pick something to eat. Although it was called a banquet, to be honest, everyone was a little far away from the table. After all, they didn't come here to eat. Jiang Hai didn't come here to eat either. But after considering that he was dressed like this, even if he went to make friends with those people, the chances of him getting the cold shoulder wasn't small. Rather than that, he used his 1 million to offset the tax and ate a free meal, so it wasn't a wasted trip. As for opening a trade route, to be honest, Jiang Hai didn't care too much about it because he had absolute strength. Salmon, cod, this is redhead? F*ck, why are they all raw? Could it be that I can only eat fruit? Jiang Hai picked up a banana and ate it while looking at the food on the long table. However, at a cold table, everything was naturally cold. The so-called cold food was not something that was left cold after it was finished. It was something that was cold from the beginning, such as some sushi, salads, and the like, which were the mainstream here. But Jiang Hai had a problem. He didn't eat raw things, so now he was also very confused. Hello. Just as Jiang Hai didn't know what to eat, a very pleasant female voice came to his ear. Jiang Hai looked up and found that it was indeed a girl. The girl was about 1.7 meters tall. Of course, this was because she was wearing high heels. He glanced at the soles of the shoes. Although they weren't very high, they were still 6 or 7 centimeters, so the girl was about 1.65 meters tall. She had long black hair and her skin was a bit bronze. She was not a pure white girl, but she was a very obvious American woman. Her face was a bit wide, but her jaw was very narrow. It looked a bit strange, but it matched with her exquisite 5 views. She was wearing a black half-lace dress. At this time, she was holding a glass of wine and smiling at Jiang Hai in front of her. Oh, hello. After taking another bite of the banana, Jiang Hai nodded to the girl. He didn't seem to know her. How come you are eating here alone? Are you hungry? Seeing Jiang Hai responding to her, the girl also smiled and said to Jiang Hai, Oh, I don't know anyone. It's quite unusual for me to dress like this, and I don't know what to say to these people. Anyway, the donated money can be used to offset the tax, so I'm ready to go back to sleep after eating. Shrugging, Jiang Hai said helplessly. Oh, you are really interesting. You came here just to eat? If you let Mr. Silva know, he will probably want to refund your 1 million yuan to you. Hearing Jiang Hai's explanation, the girl covered her mouth and laughed. The Mr. Silva in her mouth was Adam Silva, who is often called Xiao Hua, the current president of the NBA. If I can refund it, I think I will consider it. Jiang Hai shook his head and looked at the girl and said with a chuckle, Let me introduce myself. I've been talking to you for so long. I don't think you recognize me. My name is Selena Gomez. Oh well, you really don't know me. I'm an actress and a singer. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the girl took the initiative to stretch out her hand and said to Jiang Hai. Sure enough, when she said her name, Jiang Hai's face was still blank. She laughed at herself. As a quasi-A-list celebrity in the American entertainment industry, she was really worried about her popularity. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't really recognize people. After all, I've only been here for a short while. Actually, most of the Americans here look pretty much the same to me except for the color of their skin. It's just like how you look at Asians. Seeing Selena Gomez's words, Jiang Hai was a little embarrassed and found a reason. At the same time, he stretched out his hand and shook the girl's hand, but then he let go. He was not a pig who couldn't walk away when he saw a woman. I came here this time mainly to thank you. The Justin Bieber you taught a lesson to is my ex-boyfriend, but he is really a bad person. Looking at Jiang Hai, the woman casually leaned in front of the table and talked about the reason why she came to talk to Jiang Hai this time. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai nodded. No wonder. In fact, Jiang Hai didn't pay much attention to these things. If he paid attention, he would know about the grievances between Justin Bieber and Selena Gomez. The two were together in 2011, but they broke up in 2013. But for Justin Bieber, if he couldn't have her, he would find a way to destroy her. This was not some malicious hype because he himself did not need any hype. His specialty sales were still very high. His way of doing things was actually the most simple B-type mentality. If he could not have it, no one else could either. So on some programs or his own Twitter, he revealed the love history between him and Selena. He even told the world that Selena's first time was with him. It would be strange if a woman didn't hate such a bad person. However, Jiang Hai didn't know this, but it didn't prevent him from agreeing with the woman's words. Nodding, Jiang Hai said seriously, "Well, that kid needs to be taught a lesson. He is indeed a bad person." By the way, what kind of business does Mr. Jiang do? Obviously, Selena didn't want to talk too much about Bieber now, especially in front of a strange man. Although she was grateful to this man, she didn't want to talk too much about it. I have a manor in Boston that specializes in raising cattle, horses, fish, grapes, wine, and so on. Hearing Selena's words, Jiang Hai smiled and said to her. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Selena was a little surprised. She originally thought that Jiang Hai was a company manager or something like that. After all, in her opinion, Jiang Hai really looked like an ordinary otaku. 70% of the people in Silicon Valley had the unique characteristics of Jiang Hai, the otaku aura. Come on, I can't really let you leave after dinner here. I'll introduce you to someone. Hearing Jiang Hai's introduction, Selena smiled and led Jiang Hai to the crowd in the distance. Chapter 168. Where are we going? Hearing Selena's words, Jiang Hai was stunned again. He didn't want to come here in vain, but the problem was that he really didn't know these people. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Selena smiled. She suddenly felt that this Jiang Hai was really an interesting person. She didn't say anything, but instead, she pulled Jiang Hai's arm and walked to a corner in the distance. When Jiang Hai came over, he saw a woman sitting on a sofa in the corner. This woman looked to be in her 30s. She was a very pure Caucasian woman. Her well-maintained skin was extremely tight at this time. A pair of lively eyes looked around casually, but she gave people a feeling that she was like an iceberg that couldn't be approached. It could be said that this woman had the strongest aura and was the coldest beauty that Jiang Hai had ever seen. She was wearing a light blue dress, which made her seem a little out of place in this lively banquet hall. After all, the women who came to the banquet, if they didn't wear black and white, they would wear some warm colors such as yellow, red, beige, pink, and so on to show their friendly image. However, this woman did the opposite. She wore an ice blue dress. Although it was also a formal dress, it had the same effect as Jiang Hai. The most direct effect of this effect was that when she sat there, no one dared to pass within 3 meters of her. Of course, it could also be because this queen-type beauty's aura was too strong. Sister Pulla, you're here. However, Selena acted as if she didn't see such a strong aura. After walking over with a smile, she arranged for Jiang Hai to sit on the sofa opposite the woman. Then she came to the woman's side and leaned on the woman's arm with a smile. She grinned and said to the woman, "Oh, it's Selena. I recently saw the news about you. Are you okay?" Hearing the girl's words, the woman named Pulla looked at her with a smile. Although she was smiling at this time, Jiang Hai felt that even if she was smiling, she looked very cold. "It's nothing, I'm already used to that rotten person. It's just that those reporters surrounding me all day long are a bit troublesome. Alright, let me introduce you. This is Jiang Hai, the guy who helped me vent my anger. Before the rookie challenge, he taught that rotten person a lesson. His family has a manor that specializes in raising cows, fish, and the like. I remember that sister recently took over Sam's club, so I came over to introduce you to see if there's any opportunity to cooperate." Hearing this woman's words, Selena shook her head. She didn't want to be stuck in the mire of Justin Bieber again. She came here with a goal. Oh. Hearing Selena's words, the woman named Pulla raised her head in surprise and looked at Jiang Hai. Mr. Jiang is Asian? Looking at Jiang Hai's face, which is still very young here, Prawalton asked him. Oh, I'm Wuxia. Although I have a green card in the United States, I didn't become a citizen, so I'm still a Wuxia citizen. Hearing her words, there was nothing to hide, so Jiang Hai said directly to her. Oh, is that so? Then may I know where Mr. Jiang's manor is located? How much stock does it have? And how is the quality? Looking at Jiang Hai, Prawalton shook the glass in front of her and said slowly. In fact, in her heart, she really has no interest in Jiang Hai's manor, but she has a good personal relationship with Selena. Although the United States emphasizes that one thing is another, if she directly refuses without even asking, it will hurt their relationship. My manor is in Boston. To be exact, it should be in Winthrop. I have a total of about 20,000 cows now. As for the quality, I don't know much about it, but what I usually eat is the top grade A Frost snowflake beef. It's all produced by my manor, and it has a decent output. After thinking about it, Jiang Hai described his manor. He had no impression of Sam's Club at all. He didn't even know what this guy was. Just like this woman was perfunctory with him, he was also perfunctory with this woman, but he still chose to tell the truth. This Selena helped to introduce him, so he couldn't ignore her face. In Jiang Hai's view, his beef is the one he doesn't have to worry about. Special grade A Frost snowflake beef? It seems that Mr. Jiang's quality of life is still very good. There are no more than 5 people here who can eat this kind of beef without limit. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the woman chuckled. In her opinion, Jiang Hai was talking nonsense. No matter how rich a person is, it's impossible to eat special grade A Frost snowflake beef for every meal. The retail price of this thing is between $350 and $400 per pound. Even the cheapest price is $350, 1 pound per meal. 3 meals a day is 3 pounds, which adds up to $1,050, and this is just the cost of the beef. 365 days a year is nearly $400,000. $400,000 is not a lot. They don't lack this money. But this is only for one person. If it's for a family, 2 people will be $800,000, 3 people will be $2 million, and 10 people will be $4 million. This doesn't include other money. With this kind of steak, seasonings and the like also need to be specially made. In addition, even Bill Gates may not be willing to eat this kind of beef every day. Now it seems that if Jiang Hai is telling the truth, then he is a spendthrift, but the chances of him bragging are higher. Don't believe me? Look, you're smiling like that. I know you don't believe me. I'm telling the truth. I don't have to worry about the sales of my beef, because I'm going to participate in the beef show here in April this year. Every cow I slaughter can produce special grade A beef. As long as I get the Beef King, I think the sales of my beef will be no problem. You see, you don't believe me again. How about this? If you really don't believe me, come to my place when you have time and I'll show you. Seeing this woman's gaze, for an otaku like Jiang Hai, what he couldn't stand the most was others looking down on him. Well, his poor self-esteem was constantly being worshipped, so he didn't hold back and directly said to this woman. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the woman was startled by his confident tone. In fact, the most important thing was that she was startled by his words. Every cow can be slaughtered to produce special grade A beef? What the hell is this? I want to take a look. Hearing Jiang Hai's confident words, the woman looked at him with some interest. She didn't know why Jiang Hai said this. Was it simply to lure her to his manor? Or was he really that confident? Looking at Jiang Hai's appearance, the woman's sixth sense told her that this man is not lying. If what he said is true, then she will definitely not let go of this fat piece of meat. I can't do it recently. The day after tomorrow is the new year of our Wuxia. I have to go home for the new year. I will probably be back at the end of February. How about this? If you really want to take a look, you can go after that time. I welcome you at any time. Hearing that this woman wanted to see for herself, Jiang Hai didn't say much and directly agreed. After the two exchanged phone numbers, Jiang Hai also got up and left. When he left, Selena also followed. She now found this guy to be really interesting. After staying in the United States for so long, she actually doesn't know me. It's fine if she doesn't know me, but as a manor owner, she doesn't even seem to know Prawalton. This guy is really funny. Hey, your strategy just now is not bad. Let Sister Pulla go to your place to take a look. If she really likes it, the sales of your 20,000 cows will not be a problem. This can be considered as a small help from me. You don't have to thank me. After the two left Prawalton, Selena Gomez also patted Jiang Hai's shoulder and said to him with a smile. Strategy my ass. I'm telling the truth. I don't dare to say anything else, but I have enough premium grade A beef. Eat as much as you want. When Jiang Hai heard Selena's words, he couldn't help but look at her. This little girl is still too naive. I'm obviously telling the truth. Really? Seeing Jiang Hai's serious look, Selena was also stunned. Although she wasn't in this business, at least she knew what premium grade beef was. At present, the world's beef was almost cut off by the United States. Except for some countries like Wuxia, which didn't import American beef, most of the country's markets were occupied by American beef. However, in this world of American beef, there was a unique existence. It stood proudly at the peak of the beef world, and that was Japan's Wagyu beef. Why was Wagyu so expensive? Some people said that it was because they drank red wine, had professional massages, and so on. But in the end, it was because they could make more delicious premium grade of frost beef. It could be seen how important this kind of beef was in people's hearts. Even if she was a big star, she would not have many opportunities to eat this kind of beef. Now that Jiang Hai said she could eat as much as she wanted, it really made her curious. Okay, then I'll go with Sister Pula. You have to treat me well. This is my private phone number. Here, someone is calling me. I'll go first. Looking at Jiang Hai's serious look, Selena showed her signature smile. She took out a business card from a hidden place in her skirt and stuffed it into Jiang Hai's hand. At this time, a few girls were greeting her in the distance. She also quickly said something to Jiang Hai and ran over. Looking at the business card in his hand, Jiang Hai was a little speechless and scratched his head. You gave me a business card just like that? Well, I'll keep it. After all, it was also a star's business card. When he returned to China, he could show it off in front of his buddies. However, according to his understanding of his buddies, they wouldn't recognize it even if he took it out. Compared to a star's business card, they were more interested in the NBA. Thinking of this, Jiang Hai couldn't help but touch his chin. Should he ask for an autograph? Chapter 169. Phew. As the plane descended from the sky, Jiang Hai yawned and staggered out of Bing City's airport. However, as soon as he stepped out of the gate, a gust of cold wind blew past him, instantly dispelling his sleepiness. I'm finally back, Jiang Hai said with a smile as he stretched his back and looked at the foggy sky. However, as soon as he opened his mouth, he couldn't help but cough twice. The air in Boston was far worse than Texas and Montana. Even so, in Jiang Hai's opinion, the air in Boston was quite good. At least, it was much better than New York, Los Angeles, and other cities. However, compared to China, New York was actually better. Of course, this was mainly referring to the first-tier cities. In recent years, with the development of the first-tier cities in China, at least in terms of air quality, it was indeed difficult for people to accept. Ever since the All-Star competition, Jiang Hai had attended a banquet that night. For him, all he got was 2 women's phone numbers before he left because he was full. The next afternoon he boarded a plane from New York back to China. From the US to China there were only 3 major cities. The imperial capital, Shanghai, and eastern Guangdong. Eastern Guangdong was an additional route. Only Luo City was used. The routes between the imperial capital and Shanghai were slightly more. This time Jiang Hai was flying to the imperial capital. After 13.5 hours of flight, Jiang Hai knew what time it was when he boarded the plane and when he got off. It was 3:50 p.m. when he boarded the plane and 6:20 p.m. when he got off. At that time he didn't directly transfer to Bing City. After all, there was still a day's time. He bought a plane from American Express for the next day and flew back to Bing City. Here Jiang Hai once again felt the greatness of Yunyong. After all, this was the Huaxia period of the year. Oh no, it was the period of the largest migration of people in the world. It was indeed amazing that he could buy a plane ticket at this time. Jiang Hai flew back to Bing City at around 4 p.m. on February 17, 2015. Thinking that tomorrow was New Year's Eve, Jiang Hai felt a lot of emotions. It was better to spend New Year's Eve at home even if there was no one at home. Jiang Hai, over here. Just as Jiang Hai was lamenting the loneliness of life, a voice suddenly came from afar. Jiang Hai fixed his eyes and found that the person who greeted him was none other than 2 of his friends, Fu Yuan and Xiang Hua. These 2 people were his junior high school classmates and their relationship was quite good. When Jiang Hai came back last time, he ate a lot with these 2 people. Moreover, Fu Yuan kept saying that he wanted to go to Jiang Hai's manor to play. He had even signed the contract. Although it was a little cold to go now, he was still prepared to spend the new year at home and then go to the United States with Jiang Hai for a few days. That was the United States. He had only heard of it before, but he had never seen it before. Hey, I'm here. Hearing their voices, Jiang Hai also tightened his backpack and walked over. You're finally back. Let's go. Get in the car. Seeing Jiang Hai coming over, Fu Yuan and Xiang Hua also greeted him immediately. They originally wanted to help Jiang Hai carry his things, but after looking at Jiang Hai, they found that Jiang Hai had nothing but a backpack. The two of them were not used to it. Come, I brought something for you. Sitting in Fu Yuan's car, Jiang Hai opened his backpack with a smile and took out a few autographed photos from it. In this backpack there were a total of 2 sets of clothes, which were the 2 sets that Jiang Hai carried from home. In addition, there were only some autographed photos. These autographed photos were all from the star players at the NBA banquet. These star players were still very kind to Jiang Hai. They didn't mind if he asked for autographed photos as long as he prepared a pen and photos. So, Jiang Hai got a lot of autographed photos. Why did you bring anything else? Your beef is very good. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Fu Yuan also said with a smile. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but give him the middle finger. Damn, of course it's very good. Those are special A-grade frost snow beef. 1 pound, which is 9 taels, costs more than 2,000 yuan. How much? Are you crazy? More than 2,000 yuan for a piece of beef? What's wrong with the beef? Can you become an immortal after eating it? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Fu Yuan was shocked, and Xiang Hua was even more shocked. What kind of game is this? A piece of beef is more than 2,000 yuan. What a scam. This is just the cost price. If it was in a Western restaurant, it would at least be doubled. Looking at the appearance of these two people, Jiang Hai said proudly. In fact, when he first heard about this thing, he was not much better than these two people, but recently he has been used to it. Damn, are you kidding me? Do you know that I ate a piece? Are you going to scam me? I tell you, I don't have the money. If you want my life, I won't give you. While driving, Fu Yuan looked at Jiang Hai in the rearview mirror and said, Scam you? I was going to bring this back for you to taste. Let's see tomorrow. We will get together in the morning and then divide the beef. By the way, don't you like Wade? This is his autographed photo for you. Xiang Hua, who do you like? By the way, if you don't like basketball, then I won't give it to you. Hearing Fu Yuan's voice trembling a little, Jiang Hai patted his back seat hard, then smiled and picked out a photo and gave it to Fu Yuan. Fu Yuan liked to play basketball when he was in school, but after stepping into society, he had no love for basketball. This was just the opposite of Jiang Hai. Jiang Hai had no love for basketball when he was in school, but after stepping into society, he became interested. Several people talked and laughed, and unknowingly they also got on the airport highway. After a while, they had entered the city. Although Jiang Hai hasn't been back for a few months, he still remembers the way home. As soon as they entered the city, they should turn at a road, but Fu Yuan's car went straight. What's wrong? You don't want to take Hashi, but you want to take Shuefu Road? Looking at the road outside the window, Jiang Hai said strangely. If you come back, then go home. Let's go eat first. Hearing Jiang Hai's doubts, Fu Yuan said with a smile. Eat? Oh, when did you become so sensible? You even know to give me a free ride and wash the dust. As soon as he heard what Fu Yuan said, Jiang Hai smiled and leaned over in the back seat, saying with a smirk on his face. What free ride? Tonight is a junior high school class reunion. Xiang Hua listened to Jiang Hai's words and couldn't help but roll his eyes at him. When he heard about the class reunion, Jiang Hai's brows couldn't help but frown. To be honest, he had no interest in any class reunion. In his view, the class reunion was nothing more than men showing off their money, women showing off their husbands, lonely men and women talking nonsense, and so on. Those who go to the class reunion will more or less have some purpose to seek connections. For example, Jiang Hai, now he is not short of money. Second, his career is in Boston. There is no one he wants to see among his classmates. What is there to attend? I don't really want to go. I want to go back to sleep. They don't know that I'm back. That's it. You can send me back first. After thinking about it, Jiang Hai decided to tell the truth. Don't. I told them that you are back. We have paid the money for you. If you don't go for a meal, it will be a waste. Besides, our junior high school's campus belle will also go. If you don't go, it will be a pity. You didn't have a crush on her when you were in junior high school, right? Looking at Jiang Hai in the rearview mirror, Fu Yuan said anxiously. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai only gave him a middle finger. Crush my ass. It has nothing to do with me. When I was in junior high school, I only cared about playing games. How can I have the leisure time to care about the affairs of men and women? Looking at Fu Yuan contemptuously, Jiang Hai said indifferently. Thinking about it carefully, it seems to be true. Jiang Hai was very talented in games when he was in junior high school. He played War 3 and was invincible in the Internet Cafe street near their school. He was also recommended by the Internet Cafe to participate in the offline competition of WCG. Unfortunately, he was eliminated in 3 rounds. In the first round he was in samsara. In the second round his opponent had diarrhea. In the first 5 minutes he didn't have a fast attack, so he gave up. In the third round his opponent played normally, so he went home. It seems that he really didn't have a scandal with anyone, so after thinking about it, Fu Yuan pointed to another person next to him. That is Xiang Hua, who has a crush on her. Boss, I'm married. But Xiang Hua's answer was more straightforward, looking at him contemptuously. Well, I have a crush on her. Are you a brother? Do you want to go with me? Hearing Xiang Hua's words, Fu Yuan helplessly opened his mouth, but finally shook his head and admitted it. Looking at this guy's appearance, Jiang Hai couldn't help but laugh in the back row. Although Jiang Hai really didn't want to go to this place, his brother had already spoken. It was just a meal, so it didn't matter. I despise you to death, let's go. He patted Fu Yuan's back again. Jiang Hai also leaned against the back row and opened his hand. Although he didn't know what the scene would be later, he needed to conserve his energy first. Flying was really tiring. Seeing that Jiang Hai finally agreed, Fu Yuan's old face also smiled like a blooming chrysanthemum. If Jiang Hai really didn't want to go, then he really could only send Jiang Hai home. However, he always felt that Jiang Hai, this local tyrant, was not by his side. He always felt a little uncertain in his heart. But fortunately, Jiang Hai still agreed because of their brotherhood. This was good news. Taking advantage of the fact that Jiang Hai didn't have time to regret, he also sped up the car and rushed to the place where they agreed to meet. Not long after, they had already stopped in front of a 4-star hotel. This was the place for the appointment. Chapter 170. Hey, you guys are finally here. We're just waiting for you. Hurry up. It's room 306 on the 3rd floor. I think it's about time for them to leave. After parking the car, the 3 of them walked into the lobby of the hotel. As soon as they walked in, they saw a woman with a big belly coming over with a smile. This person is none other than Jiang Hai's class monitor. This class reunion was also organized by her. Usually, Jiang Hai has no contact with her, but Fu Yuan and Xiang Hua have a close relationship with her. They often go to her house to play mahjong. Although she is a mahjong enthusiast, her strength is very poor. Her character is the same as a man's. She is very forthright. Now that she is pregnant and has a big belly, she still comes out to play. Everyone is here? Hearing the class monitor's words, Fu Yuan suddenly became interested and asked excitedly. Almost everyone is here. After calculating the number of people in her mind, the class monitor also said with a smile. That is you Jia here too? Hearing the class monitor's words, Fu Yuan asked the class monitor in a low voice. She's here. Let's go up. Seeing Fu Yuan's sullen look, the class monitor also said to him with a chuckle. Okay. As soon as he heard that this person was also here, Fu Yuan was like a wild dog that was out of its reins and was about to rush upstairs. But before he could run, he was stopped by Jiang Hai. Wait, the campus bell you are talking about, don't tell me you are referring to Yu Jia. Looking at Fu Yuan, Jiang Hai couldn't believe what he was seeing. Of course, who else do you think it is? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Fu Yuan said with a righteous face. Looking at his righteous appearance, Jiang Hai really had nothing to say. I knew you had a strong taste, but I didn't expect it to be so strong. Well, let's go up. Seeing Fu Yuan's eagerness to try, Jiang Hai chuckled. It seems that people's aesthetic standards really can't be easily changed. The Yu Jia from Fu Yuan's mouth was also a weirdo when Jiang Hai and the others were in school. Girls develop early. This is inevitable. This Yu Jia not only develops early, but her figure is not small. Jiang Hai remembered that the last time he saw her should be in the 4th year of junior high school. At that time she was already more than 1.8 meters tall and weighed more than 170 kilograms. When Jiang Hai and the others were in school, they provoked the gangsters outside. Those gangsters sent people to the school to block them. That fight was earth-shattering. Jiang Hai, Xiang Hua, and Fu Yuan fought until their clothes were torn. Of course, the other party was not having a good time, but they were lying down several times and no one came to help. It was not that they were not popular, but those students were more afraid. At that time, Yu Jia just passed by. The leader of the gangsters thought that he had beaten Jiang Hai and the others, so he casually spat on Yu Jia's shoes. As a result, those gangsters were miserable. 3 of them had their teeth knocked out. Jiang Hai and the others just stood there and watched Yu Jia beat 7 of them alone. That majestic appearance scared Jiang Hai and the others silly even in their dreams at night. Since then, Jiang Hai gave her a nickname, Invincible Iron Fist. However, unlike Jiang Hai and Xiang Hua who were scared, it seemed that Fu Yuan liked such a girl at that time. But later the two did not have any connections. Fu Yuan went to an ordinary high school, and Yu Jia went to a sports school to practice wrestling. Now that he thought about it, with Jiang Hai's physique he had some chills. "Hey, when did you come back?" Because it was only the third floor, they were too lazy to wait for the elevator. A group of people walked upstairs. When they were walking, the class monitor walked to Jiang Hai's side and asked Jiang Hai curiously. Although Jiang Hai usually does not interact with these classmates, after all they have common friends Fu Yuan and Xiang Hua. So the class monitor also heard some news about Jiang Hai from these two people. When she learned that Jiang Hai was coming today, she was very surprised because Fu Yuan paid for it, and she was not sure whether Jiang Hai would come or not. "Hey, don't mention it. I just got off the plane and was brought here. I didn't even go home." Hearing the class monitor's words, Jiang Hai also smiled. To be honest, he was really not interested in the class reunion. From his point of view, this was a place where a melodramatic plot of pretentiousness and face-slapping occurred. His main focus now was on farming, not face-slapping. Therefore, if it weren't for Fu Yuan, he wouldn't have bothered to come here. "By the way, how are you and Chili? I received a call from Chili a few days ago. She said that she couldn't find you, so she asked me for Fu Yuan's phone number. Tell me, did you do something bad that day?" Seeing Jiang Hai's appearance, the class monitor smiled and joked. Hearing the class monitor's words, Jiang Hai's mouth was also smiling, but he was already cursing in his heart. "This girl is really a busybody. I say you should pay more attention to your daily life. Chili is different from ordinary girls. She is beautiful and rich. What are you not satisfied with? In my opinion, you should treat her better in daily life." Seeing that Jiang Hai did not refute or explain, the class monitor also began to talk non-stop. Now that she is pregnant, she has a sensitive personality. Even if Jiang Hai wants to refute, he can't say anything. It's very troublesome. But fortunately, the third floor was still very close. Not long after, everyone had arrived in front of a private room. As Fu Yuan, who was walking in front, pushed open the door, a noisy scene appeared in front of Jiang Hai in an instant. "Hey, you three are finally here. Come, sit down, the banquet is about to start." As soon as he saw Jiang Hai and others come in, a little fatty who was originally in the room, couldn't help but walk over with a smile and said loudly. This little fatty was also a classmate of Jiang Hai. He is their class monitor's current husband. When he was young he was very active in the class. But because his studies were good he was also okay. He didn't have any enemies. His relationship with his classmates was good, and he was also quite liked by the teachers. Now that it was a class reunion, it was understandable for him to be active. "Congratulations, you are going to be a father soon." Seeing him coming over, Jiang Hai also smiled and cupped his fist and said to him, "Haha, of course when my child is 100 days old you have to come over to drink." Seeing Jiang Hai, the people here also laughed and said. Jiang Hai naturally agreed, but he estimated that he wouldn't be able to come back by then. At most, he would ask Fu Yuan to help him bring some money, but it was estimated that the other party was just being polite. When Jiang Hai got married he didn't invite them, right? To be exact, it should be that Chili didn't tell them, because Chili didn't want too many people to know that they were married. Even the wedding was held to appease the old employees of the company and her mother. After a few words of greeting, Jiang Hai casually found an empty table in the corner and sat there. Looking at the lively scene in front of him, Jiang Hai didn't have the leisure to get close to these classmates. Some people said that after meeting each other at a class reunion, even if they weren't very familiar with each other before, they would feel very close. Because this represented their irreplaceable youth, but for Jiang Hai he didn't feel this way. Jiang Hai was a very eccentric person since he was a child. When he was young he liked to be self-centered, so he didn't make any friends in the entire 5th grade of primary school. When he reached junior high school his character gradually became more open and he made some friends. He also made some friends in high school, but they were alienated because he didn't contact them for too long. When he was in college he also made a few friends, but after all, college students were different from high school students and junior high school students. They might not make friends with you just because you were hot-blooded. Especially after learning that Jiang Hai's family had an accident, he only had a few friends left. Fortunately, Jiang Hai usually stayed at home, so it didn't matter. Jiang Hai's class had a total of more than 40 people. Today nearly 30 people came, which was not a small number. Inside this private room, there were a total of 3 tables. Sitting there, everyone was looking for their friends, chatting and having fun. However, Jiang Hai really didn't have anything to talk about with these people. As for Fu Yuan and Xiang Hua, after entering the room, they plunged into the crowd. Fu Yuan was mainly around a very tall and strong woman. If they met on the street, Jiang Hai probably wouldn't recognize her, but now he guessed that this should be Yu Jia. Now she didn't look shorter than Jiang Hai, and her size should be more than 200. Jiang Hai had always held a reserved attitude about Fu Yuan's aesthetic views. As for Xiang Hua, when he was in junior high school, he was much more popular than Jiang Hai. Now, as soon as he came in, he was called by others to reminisce, so Jiang Hai could only sit there by himself. However, although he seemed a little lonely, Jiang Hai was quite happy. There was no melodramatic plot, so he was also happy and relaxed. He only hoped that after eating here he could go back to sleep. After all, even if it was a first-class cabin, even if Jiang Hai's physique was somewhat unbearable to sit on a 13-hour flight, he didn't completely recover after sleeping in the capital, and today he also took a flight, so he was a little tired. As for the other classmates, it wasn't that no one knew that Jiang Hai was now mingling in the United States, but Fu Yuan and the others also knew the principle of not showing off one's wealth, so sometimes when they talked about Jiang Hai, they more often said that Jiang Hai raised cattle and fish in Boston. This made Jiang Hai's classmates have little interest in Jiang Hai. After all, in the eyes of most young people of this age, no matter where you raise cattle or fish, you are still a country bumpkin and can't borrow strength. It couldn't be better that no one came to disturb him, so after taking a sip of tea, Jiang Hai leaned against the wall behind him and prepared to sleep. However, he didn't want to be in the limelight, but it didn't mean that others would let him be so peaceful. Chapter 171. Jiang Hai. Just as Jiang Hai was about to fall asleep in a daze, a slightly clear voice sounded in Jiang Hai's ears. Hearing this voice, Jiang Hai opened his eyes strangely. Then what entered his eyes was a girl's face that looked very good. Thick eyebrows gave people a strong and handsome feeling. Her eyes were so big that it was against common sense. They were watery and looked really surprising. High nose bridge, long chin, sharp lower jaw, thin lips, and the two cute silkworms under her eyes. In addition, there were two small dimples on her smooth and white face. Jiang Hai was a little confused. What's going on? Did I transmigrate? But then he heard the voices of the classmates next to him continuing to make noise. He knew that he was thinking too much. But now he was at a class reunion. He had no impression of who this woman was. You don't remember me? I'm Yunliao Feng Yunshan. We used to sit at the same table. Seeing the confusion in Jiang Hai's eyes, the girl pretended to be angry. She pouted and rebuked Jiang Hai. Ugh. Looking at the girl's appearance and listening to her voice, Jiang Hai felt as if the air in the room had frozen for a second. Almost all the boys in the room looked at Jiang Hai at this time. Obviously, the lethality of a beauty was very strong. And this beauty's every move would attract the attention of these men. Just like what Jiang Hai said in the car at a class reunion, in addition to showing off, dating was also very important. Wait, let me think. Feeling those gazes scraping his body, Jiang Hai also smiled slightly awkwardly. Then he carefully recalled in his mind. Then he clapped his hands and remembered this name. Feng Yunshan was also a girl in their class. When she was in the first year of junior high, she wasn't tall and hadn't grown up yet, so Jiang Hai didn't have much of an impression of her. In the second year of junior high she grew a little, but she had orthodontics, so who would notice a girl with a pair of glasses and big steel teeth? What's more, Jiang Hai was more focused on the game at that time, so he didn't have a deep impression of her. He only remembered that she seemed to be good at her studies. Her family's conditions were quite ordinary. He heard that her parents were foreigners. In order to let her receive a better education, they came to the city to sell vegetables while providing for her studies. In junior high she always wore simple clothes. At that time Jiang Hai and the others didn't like to wear school uniforms the most, but this girl wore school uniforms all year round. Jiang Hai and her did sit at the same table. It was in the third year of junior high. Jiang Hai's father went to the class teacher at that time and invited him to a meal and gave him some gifts. The class teacher moved his seat from the second to last row to the second to last row, just right to sit with this girl. However, they only sat for more than a month. There was a monthly exam. This girl was second in the class and third in the grades. Jiang Hai was 37th in the class and 91st in the school year. There were more than 120 students in total. Since then, Jiang Hai took the initiative to transfer away. He said that he didn't want to delay other people's studies. In fact, he felt that sleeping in the second row and always being stared at by the teacher was too sleepy. He might as well go to the back and sleep. This was also his survival rule. Hey, I remember that your face used to be round. Why did it change now? Looking at the girl, Jiang Hai asked curiously. Hey, it was an injection. The double eyelids were also done later. But everything else is mine. After wearing glasses for so many years, my nose actually didn't collapse. It's considered lucky. Seeing that Jiang Hai really remembered her, Feng Yunshan also laughed. While laughing, she winked at Jiang Hai. Hearing this, Jiang Hai really didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Other women couldn't wait to hide the news of their plastic surgery. Why did this girl take the initiative to confess? Ha ha, look at you. What? Are you scared? I'm not going to give birth to a monkey for you. What are you afraid of? Really? By the way, I heard that you got a manor in the United States? Raising cattle and fish, how are things going recently? Looking at Jiang Hai's expression as if he had seen a ghost, Feng Yunshan smiled and patted Jiang Hai. Then she continued to ask Jiang Hai. I'm doing well recently. But the cattle, fish and so on, I just raised them. I haven't sold them yet, so I don't know how they are doing. What about you? Sometimes people just need to brag, but sometimes people can't brag, especially now. Jiang Hai didn't want to suddenly have a lot of people around him who borrowed money in the name of his classmates. He wasn't close to them and he didn't want to be close to them. So, at this time, it seemed to him that it was the right choice to be a little more reserved. Me? I'm considered a model. In the beginning I went to SG. In recent years I've taken some booth work, mainly as a car model. Occasionally I'll take some photos. By the way, do you know SG? Hearing that Jiang Hai didn't seem to want to talk about his work, Feng Yunshan didn't mind. Instead she introduced herself. Oh, I know SG. Shooting guard. Hearing Feng Yunshan's words, Jiang Hai thought about it in his mind. In his knowledge, this seems to be the only thing that is abbreviated as SG. Bullshit, booth girl is someone who endorses and promotes the company on some anime, games, movies, and so on. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Feng Yunshan couldn't help but look at him contemptuously. Is this guy teasing her? I really don't know. For this explanation, can Jiang Hai say that he really doesn't know? Aren't you an otaku? How come you don't even know this? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Feng Yunshan glanced at him. Oh, otaku are also divided into many kinds. There are 2D otaku who only watch anime. There are 3D otaku who only watch TV series and movies. There are military otaku, armed otaku, gaming otaku. Like me, I'm a fake otaku. Indeed, although Jiang Hai is a very otaku, he basically goes out of the house every day, so in his opinion he should be regarded as a fake otaku. Only you boring otaku will classify yourself. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Feng Yunshan also laughed and said. At this time, another girl came over from the side and asked Feng Yunshan to accompany her to the bathroom. This girl Jiang Hai has some impression. Her name is Sun something. Well, I can't remember, but she used to be the study commissary of their class. She was the person who looked down on Jiang Hai the most, so now she just nodded to Jiang Hai as a greeting. I'm going to the bathroom first. You stay here for me. I'll be back in a while. It can be seen that after graduation the relationship between the two was quite close, so when the girl called, Feng Yunshan followed and left. However, less than 10 seconds after she left, Xiang Hua rushed over like an arrow. Jiang Hai, you wouldn't have taken a fancy to Feng Yunshan, would you? Xiang Hua said to Jiang Hai while eating melon seeds. Damn, do you think I'm Fu Yuan? Despising Xiang Hua, Jiang Hai said weakly. At the same time he glanced at Fu Yuan who was working hard in the distance. Jiang Hai can only mourn for him for a few seconds in his heart. It's good that you are not, otherwise it would be quite troublesome. Xiang Hua said helplessly while eating melon seeds. What's the trouble? Hearing Xiang Hua's words, Jiang Hai asked with some surprise. This Feng Yunshan is not an easy person to deal with. I heard that she is now a model, and there is a big boss chasing after her. This big boss's power is not small. If you are close to her, it is easy to be retaliated against. After graduation, Xiang Hua knew a lot of stories among his classmates because of his good relationship with others. Obviously, he also heard some things about Feng Yunshan. Who the F***, this has nothing to do with me. Don't say that I am not interested in her. Even if I am interested in her, that boss can control me. I am now in the United States, not Bing City. Xiang Hua rolled his eyes. This guy is really gossipy. Hey. Then you can do whatever you want. After thinking about it, Xiang Hua waved his hand and was about to leave. Hey, don't be in a hurry to leave. Why haven't you started eating? After eating I can go back to sleep. He pointed to the time. It's already past 6 o'clock in the evening. What are you waiting for? There is still a big boss who hasn't come yet. Tianqiu, at this reunion we will each take 100 yuan, and the rest will belong to him. If he doesn't come, how can we start eating? Xiang Hua said with a smile when he heard Jiang Hai's words. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but curl his lips. Well, at first he thought that there was no big boss, but now it seems that he hasn't arrived yet. I say, do you have nothing better to do? Forget it, I'll sleep for a while. If he doesn't come by 7 o'clock, let's go out to eat. I want to eat double fried pork. With a sigh, Jiang Hai said helplessly. Okay, I'll go and tell Fu Yuan. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Xiang Hua also said with a smile. At the same time, almost the same conversation as Jiang Hai just now happened in the bathroom. But the person who asked the question became the study commissary, and the person who spoke was Feng Yunshin. Don't tell me you like Jiang Hai. Looking at Feng Yunshin, who was washing her hands in the mirror, the study commissary said with some worry. Yeah, I like him. Looking at her friend's face in the mirror, Feng Yunshin also said with a smile. Are you crazy? So many people are chasing you and you choose him? Let's not talk about Boss Lu. Let's talk about who you like. Why do you like a cattle farmer? Tianqiu has been chasing you for so many years. Whether it is wealth, property, knowledge, or appearance, I don't see how Jiang Hai is better than him. Shrugging, the study commissary recalled the appearance of Jiang Hai. A man who came to the reunion without wearing formal clothes. She didn't like it, she didn't like it very much. Lu Jingri and I are just playing around. He can't give me anything except money. As for the Tianqiu, if you like it, I'll give it to you. Feng Yunshin said with a smile after glancing at her friend behind her. Chapter 172. You, what are you talking about? I'm ignoring you. Hearing Feng Yunshin's words, the study commissary's face couldn't help but change. Since junior high school she has liked Tianqiu. This is a thing that everyone knows. Maybe Jiang Hai doesn't know because he is really quick to react to these things. At that time he put more of his mind on sleeping and playing games. In fact, she is not bad looking. She made friends with Feng Yunshin in junior high school. At first, it may be because both of them had good academic results. Later, when they grew up, they knew how to dress up. Maybe it was because Feng Yunshin was really not good looking at that time. A beautiful girl, of course, is a relatively beautiful girl. She always likes to find someone who is not as good as her to serve as a foil so that it is easier to show off. But unfortunately today she is still the same person. However, Feng Yunshin has turned from an ugly duckling into a swan. Whether this swan is artificial or natural, at least in the eyes of outsiders, she is the foil. Looking at her friend who left quickly, Feng Yunshin smiled and whispered in a voice that only she could hear. Have you seen a poor cattle farmer who can wear a Patek Philippe 502G platinum version of a complex function watch? You are ignorant. As Feng Yunshin's voice fell, she also left the bathroom again and entered the private room. When she came in, she just saw Fu Yuan and Xiang Hua sitting next to Jiang Hai. Maybe they were really afraid that Jiang Hai would leave because he was too bored, so Fu Yuan had to stop his plan to pick up girls in advance and come to persuade Jiang Hai. Seeing these three people, Feng Yunshin tidied up her clothes and walked to Fu Yuan and Xiang Hua with a smile. You are sitting. It seems to be my seat. Can you move aside? You said it's yours, then it's yours. This kid is a little sleepy. Come and talk to him. Originally, Fu Yuan wanted to talk back when he heard this. You said it's yours and it's yours? Who do you think you are? But when he saw that it was Feng Yunshin, the second half of his sentence changed. Although his aesthetic view was somewhat distorted, it did not prevent him from appreciating the beauty in the eyes of the public. However, his sixth sense told him that this woman was not someone he could afford to offend. Of course, she did not like him either. The latter was the most important thing. If Feng Yunshin hooked her finger at him now, he would probably take off his pants while running. Of course, this was a bit exaggerated. However, he still gave up his seat and let Feng Yunshin continue to sit next to Jiang Hai. What? You have such a beautiful woman sitting next to you and you're still sleepy. Feng Yunshin glanced at Jiang Hai reproachfully and said in a delicate voice. Hearing her words, Xiang Hua and Fu Yuan, who hadn't gone far, couldn't help but shudder. This woman was so terrifying. Well, how should I put it? Who is sitting next to me? I should be sleepy now. I took a 13-hour flight from the United States to the imperial capital, and then from the imperial capital back to Bingqing. It would be strange if I wasn't sleepy. But unfortunately, Jiang Hai did not respond to such a seductive voice. He continued to lean on the chair and said while yawning. Looking at Jiang Hai, Feng Yunshin blinked her big eyes and asked Jiang Hai with a smile, Hey, then after we finish eating we'll go back to sleep. By the way, isn't your manner very beautiful, very beautiful? Is the air very good? Well, the air is good. As for whether it's beautiful or not, it depends on the person. Some people like the blue sky, the forest, the sea, the beach, the grassland and so on. My manner is very beautiful. But if they like some modern buildings, my manner is a little boring. There's nothing to play with. Thinking back to his manner, no matter what others think, Jiang Hai is very satisfied. Wow, there's a beach? There's also a forest. I thought you raise cattle and a grassland is good enough. There are so many other things. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Feng Yunqin said with some surprise. Oh, I raise cattle and fish. You don't think I raise fish by digging a fish pond, right? People in the United States don't eat freshwater fish. I have a sea. The sea is quite big. I should be spreading live bait now. Next month I will release the fry. The fish I raise are grouper, longfin, Atlantic salmon, salmon and so on. Looking at Feng Yunqin in front of him, Jiang Hai explained. And the more she listened to Jiang Hai's words, the brighter Feng Yunqin's eyes became, and she had a very interested expression. By the way, as a model, sometimes we have to go abroad to take some photos. In fact, it's okay to take photos in China, but 13 frames abroad will be higher. It's good for accumulating popularity. Since you have a beach, is it convenient for us to take photos there? Looking at Jiang Hai, Feng Yunqin asked with a smile. Oh, there's no problem with this. After thinking about it, it's just taking some photos, he doesn't care. Then it's a deal. Seeing that Jiang Hai agreed, Feng Yunqin immediately agreed. At this moment, with a bang sound, the door of the private room was opened again, and a person dressed very strangely came in from the outside. This guy was more than 8 meters tall, almost the same as Jiang Hai. Jiang Hai couldn't tell what he looked like, but it could be seen that he was obviously wearing makeup. Although the man with makeup looked like a sissy in Jiang Hai's eyes, this person felt good about himself. His hair was very strange and the rest of his hair was very short. Only the bangs in front were relatively long, and it was deliberately made into a strand of white hair. Coupled with his oily appearance, it really, reminded Jiang Hai of a monster in a movie. At this time he was wearing a white fur coat with some black stripes. It looks like tiger skin, but everyone knows that it's bullshit. Even if it's really tiger skin, he wouldn't dare to wear it. But the most eye-catching thing is that there are 2 pheasant feathers on the front of his coat. It's really gaudy. Hey Uriel. Happy Chinese New Year. As soon as this guy walked in, his body floated forward for a distance and then he landed. He showed his white teeth and said loudly to the 3 tables in front of him. Hey, why are you only here now? We're still waiting for you to start eating. But your English skills have improved. That's right, that's right. If Director Tian isn't here, we won't be in the mood to eat. Come. Director Tian, sit here. There's an empty seat here. After hearing his voice, everyone in the room fell silent for 3 seconds. Most of the boys burst out with a strange enthusiasm. Their gazes were really fervent. One by one they ran in front of this guy wanting to pull him to sit with them. This person also smiled and chatted with these people. As for the other girls who were still gossiping, most of them tidied up their clothes and showed their best side. One by one they sat there and secretly flirted with this guy. Out of the nearly 30 people in the hall, only Jiang Hai, Fu Yuan, and a few other men didn't move. The rest of the people were like flies that saw feces. They suddenly surrounded them. Seeing this scene, Jiang Hai's eyebrows twitched. He originally thought that this melodramatic scene wouldn't happen, but now it seemed that he was overthinking it. F***ck, what the hell? You don't know him? Well, it seems that your zodiac sign is a goldfish. Your memory only has 7 seconds. This guy is Tianqiu. You guys even fought when you were in junior high. Seeing that Jiang Hai didn't seem to remember who this person was, Feng Yunqin smiled and introduced him. Tianqiu Tiandadu? Well, it seems that his head is getting bigger and bigger. Nodding when Tianqiu's name was mentioned, Jiang Hai understood. This guy really didn't get along with Jiang Hai in school. This guy's studies were in the middle of the class. He was slightly better than Jiang Hai. He liked to play basketball and was also tall. His father was originally the deputy director of a police station, so his family had some money and some power. In junior high school, which student didn't go to the internet cafe to play? He met Jiang Hai in the internet cafe. They were all classmates. Because he was bored, he played a game of Counter-Strike. He was defeated 42-1 by Jiang Hai. He flew into a rage out of humiliation and directly turned off Jiang Hai's computer. Then he fought with Jiang Hai. Although this guy was tall and strong, his fighting level was really bad. After being beaten up by Jiang Hai, he went to find the teacher. In order to please his father, the teacher reprimanded Jiang Hai and also found his parents. Jiang Hai went home and was taught a lesson by his father. However, in school this guy didn't interact with Jiang Hai from then on. This was because Jiang Hai's father beat him up because he went to the internet cafe, not because of a fight in school. The education policy in the Northeast was slightly different from other places. When Jiang Hai was young, he didn't do well in his studies, did well in exams, went to the game hall, internet cafe, and had puppy love. These things were bound to be beaten. However, if he got into trouble such as smashing glass, fighting, or breaking something in school, nothing would happen. He would compensate for what he should do. At most, when he went home, he would say a few words. He wouldn't even be scolded. Especially fighting. When Jiang Hai was young, he fought a lot. Every time he beat someone up, the other person's parents would bring their child to complain. His father and mother always had a bad attitude in front of others. They would turn their heads and not do anything. They would even buy delicious food for him. However, if you were beaten outside, more than 70% of the parents wouldn't stand up for you. Instead, they would be scolded. According to Jiang Hai's understanding of the people around him, more than 90% of the families were educated like this. Of course, there was no shortage of families with elite education, or they were especially spoiled in the family, but generally such children would either admit defeat or be stubborn, and they would be bullied all the time. Obviously, Tianqiu belonged to the series of admitting defeat. Looking at him like this, it really reminds me of a poem. Going to the banquet alone as a chicken feather, it's all classmates who pretend to be chicken feather. Looking at Tianqiu, who was fluttering in the wind, Jiang Hai touched his chin and said softly. Hearing his words, Feng Yunqian next to him couldn't help but laugh. Chapter 173. Where's my Yunqian? Yunqian, you're here. Come, follow me to that table. Our good friends are all there. Obviously, Tianqiu didn't hear Jiang Hai's poem. Otherwise, who knew if he would still be so cocky? The reason why he would be a sucker this time was firstly to show off in front of his old classmates. Secondly, it was for Feng Yunqian. Tianqiu's aesthetic point of view was originally the same as Fu Yuan's in the eyes of Jiang Hai and the others. They all liked the kind hee-hee. Since junior high school, Tianqiu had liked Feng Yunqian. At first, everyone thought it was because of Feng Yunqian's good grades. But it wasn't until now that everyone understood why he had known for a long time that Feng Yunqian was not bad-looking. It was just that the glasses, the old-fashioned outfit, and the braces that ruined this beauty. It was just like the song. The braces are beautiful, but the sister has such strong legs. After arriving at university, Tianqiu had been working hard to pursue Feng Yunqian. However, Feng Yunqian would rather be someone else's mistress than be with him. This was the most annoying thing for him. The most important thing was that he couldn't afford to offend the man beside Feng Yunqian. Although his family was considered a small official family, he would not be short of money. However, compared to the big entrepreneurs, he was still far from it. Presumably, this was also the reason why Feng Yunqian did not like him. In addition, Feng Yunqian had been developing in the imperial capital in recent years. He didn't have much chance to eat swan meat. However, he felt that today was an opportunity. Feng Yunqian had nowhere to go during the new year. The old man was still at home in the imperial capital. This was the time when the beauty was lonely. It was the time for him to perform well and win her over in one fell swoop. It was precisely because of this that he decided to hold this class reunion and was willing to be a sucker. As for Jiang Hai beside Feng Yunqian, well, he had temporarily forgotten who this guy was. Originally, he thought that as long as he called, Feng Yunqian would definitely run over. However, when Feng Yunqian opened her mouth, he knew that he was thinking too much. I won't go. I'm not very familiar with them. I'll stay here and have a good chat with my old desk mate. You can go over there and greet the others. Don't worry about me. Look. Originally, he thought of many answers from Feng Yunqian, but he didn't expect her to say this. For a moment, he was also a little stunned. Then he looked at Jiang Hai. Although he felt that Feng Yunqian didn't come over, he was only using Jiang Hai as a shield. But this didn't prevent him from hating Jiang Hai. AI Director Tian, come. Let's sit over there and come back later. At this time, the study committee member surnamed Sun also walked over from a distance with her long legs. She said to Tianqiu with a smile. Then she brought him to the first table. That table was the main table. Although Tianqiu was a little reluctant, he couldn't lose his temper at this time. He could only walk over with an awkward smile and sit in front of this table. However, his eyes kept glancing at Feng Yunqian from time to time. No matter how Tianqiu's mood was, now that everyone was here, it was naturally time to start the banquet. With the orders of those who were more experienced, 3 tables of the same banquet were brought over by the waiters. At this time, Fu Yuan and Xiang Hua had also finished chatting with others. They were in a small group with Jiang Hai, so naturally they had to sit together. Looking at the full banquet in front of them, many people secretly exclaimed in their hearts that they had made a profit this time. This 4-star hotel was also considered an old name in Bing City. Naturally, many people had come over to eat. Seeing the things on the banquet, Those who were flattering became energetic. Director Tian, is this a lobster? So big. It shouldn't be cheap. Pointing at the lobster in the middle of the round table, a person at Tian Chou's table exclaimed loudly. The 3 tables of dishes prepared by Tian Chou this time were indeed not cheap. The main dish was that huge lobster. Other dishes were also a lot of seafood, such as vermicelli, garlic shrimp, oysters, cold jellyfish, scallion, braised sea cucumber, steamed sturgeon. In addition to these dishes, there were many home-cooked dishes such as celery cashews, sirloin beef tenderloin, braised pork knuckle, cold tiger dish, braised meatballs, boiled baby cabbage, fried eggplant, and 2 platters. One platter was mi chashu, and the other was a cold combination of beef, chicken gizzards, and sausages. Excluding rice, there were a total of 16 dishes. A table of 10 people eating 16 dishes, naturally they couldn't finish it. The other dishes were okay, but the lobster looked really scary. It seemed that except for the whiskers, it was about 60 centimeters in size. It was indeed a very expensive thing in China. Of course, these 3 lobsters were all specially reserved by the hotel. They are all 2 feet long, and they are all Boston lobsters from Maine in the United States. This thing is very valuable there. In our place, 1 lobster costs 4,888 renminbi. Hearing this person deliberately point out the value of these lobsters, Tian Chou gave him a thumbs up in his heart and then said proudly. Hearing him say this, the people at his table naturally worked hard to flatter him, and they ate even more happily. However, when it came to Jiang Hai's table, Fu Yuan glanced at the lobster in front of him and said while eating, "Tiske, is this thing very expensive?" "It's okay, this is indeed Boston lobster, but the price also depends on the time. For such a long lobster, if the supermarket has a special price, it is estimated to sell for about $50, which is more than 300 renminbi. But when you come to my place you can eat as much as you want. I have a lot of them in the sea." Hearing Fu Yuan's words, Jiang Hai said casually. Compared to lobsters he really likes to eat them, but in China he can't afford them. "Hey, Tian Dadu is really a dadu. 4,888 renminbi, why don't you blackmail him? The price of 1 lobster you can buy 16 lobsters locally." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Xiang Hua on the other side also laughed, but ridiculing is just ridiculing. This thing is really good in China, so he also got a big pincer and ate it. Compared to lobsters and other seafood, Jiang Hai is actually more fond of other meat dishes. Before going to Boston, Jiang Hai really liked to eat seafood, but in the past 6 months he ate all kinds of fish and all kinds of steaks almost every day. In addition, the Americans really have no talent in cooking. Beef is either fried or stewed, and the stewed beef is basically the inferior beef, but in Jiang Hai's manner there is only good beef, so it can only be fried. Seafood is similar. It is either fried, roasted, or seafood soup. Although he is not tired of eating, it is still very tempting to try the authentic Wuxia food. Although the beef here was far inferior to the beef in his hometown, it was still authentic Chinese food. Jiang Hai hasn't eaten this smell for a long time. Although he is sleepy now, he is really hungry after being stirred by this smell. Seeing that Jiang Hai doesn't eat seafood, nor does he eat beef, but he specifically picks vegetables to eat. Feng Yunshin, who was sitting next to Jiang Hai, couldn't help but laugh. "It seems that you really eat these things all day over there. You are not even interested in seafood." Cough, hee, these things have shells or something. I'm too lazy to do it. Hearing Feng Yunshin's words, Jiang Hai was embarrassed to say these things. He has a lot of them. Isn't this a bit of showing off his wealth? After thinking about it, he found a reason. "Then I'll help you do it. You don't know. In our line of work, we can't eat much every day. We are hungry every day. Now that we can't enjoy it with our mouths, let me smell more." But who knew that after Jiang Hai finished speaking, Feng Yunshin also took advantage of the situation. She smiled and talked to Jiang Hai. As she spoke, she really picked up 2 garlic prawns from the plate and put them on her plate. After removing the prawns' heads, legs, and shells, she put them on Jiang Hai's plate. When she put the prawns on Jiang Hai's plate, the people at the whole table were stunned. In an instant, Jiang Hai became the focus of everyone again. Originally, the boys were very happy to be able to sit with Feng Yunshin, but they didn't expect that now they suddenly had a feeling of being abused. As for Fu Yuan and Xiang Hua, they looked at Jiang Hai with a smirk and winked. God proved that Jiang Hai really had nothing to do with this guy, but it didn't seem good if he didn't eat the prawns that were put on his plate. After hesitating for a moment, he smiled and stuffed it into his mouth. Seeing Jiang Hai eat it, Feng Yunshin smiled even more happily and continued to pluck Jiang Hai. The silence here was noticed by the people at the main table. When Tian Chou saw Feng Yunshin's actions, his heart was bleeding. Seriously, he spent tens of thousands of yuan just to make the beauty smile. In the end, the beauty did smile, but the smile wasn't with him. It was as if he was going to get married. He gave the betrothal gifts, bought a house, fixed it, held a banquet, invited friends and relatives, and finally Jiang Hai entered the bridal chamber. There was nothing for him. He was a coward. Anyone with a bit of steel would have to be at odds with Jiang Hai. But then again, even if he was at odds with Jiang Hai, what was the use? Jiang Hai didn't stay in the country. This kind of oppressive atmosphere didn't last long. As the first boy stood up to toast, the atmosphere in the room once again returned to a lively state. However, he didn't know if it was because Jiang Hai attracted public anger, but he who enjoyed the beauty's grace became the target of everyone. However, Jiang Hai didn't refuse anyone. What a joke. His current physical fitness was the limit of a human. His resistance to alcohol was also extremely high. Not to mention he only drank beer today. As long as he drank from time to time, he wouldn't drink too much. Therefore, those who wanted to see Jiang Hai make a fool of himself naturally couldn't succeed. Unknowingly, it was already past 10 o'clock in the evening. Although many people were clamoring to fight until dawn and change to a KTV or something like that to drink, Jiang Hai was already preparing to go back to sleep. When Tianqiu learned that Jiang Hai was going back to sleep, he felt that his chance had come again. But unexpectedly, just as Jiang Hai was about to leave, Feng Yunshan also wanted to go back, leaving Tianqiu alone in the wind. Of course, there were many women who were interested in him. Feng Yunshan left, but there were still many female classmates. Chapter 174. Let's go. I'll take you home. Jiang Hai wanted to leave. Fu Yuan and Xianghua here, even if they were reluctant, still had to leave. Although for Fu Yuan, his happiness for the rest of his life may be among these people, at least before the relationship was confirmed, his brothers were more important in his heart. Of course, according to Jiang Hai's estimation, the most important thing was that Yu Jia also left. After confirming that Yu Jia was not going to play with those people, Fu Yuan also walked to Jiang Hai step by step and said to him with a smile. His progress today was not bad. At least he got Yu Jia's phone number. Send my ass. You are driving under the influence now. Take a taxi back. Rolling his eyes at Fu Yuan, Jiang Hai said with a look of contempt. Hey, I called to find a designated driver. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Fu Yuan didn't go crazy. If this place was close to home, then it would be fine. But if something happened, then it would be really troublesome. Fortunately, it was quite convenient to pay the price now. Generally, people who have a car to pay the price don't care about the 100 or 80, so it doesn't matter. Okay, the designated driver is charged according to the number of kilometers. It just so happens that you are on the way and I'm not on the way. I'll take a taxi back. Looking at Fu Yuan and Xianghua, Jiang Hai didn't want them to take a detour. At the door of this hotel there were many taxis. Jiang Hai was not worried about not being able to take a taxi. Yeah, it's okay. It's just a little money. Hearing Jiang Hai's refusal, Fu Yuan was also a little embarrassed. After all, he forced Jiang Hai to come. Naturally, he also wanted to send Jiang Hai back. Jiang Hai. Just as Jiang Hai hesitated and wanted to accept his kindness, Feng Yunshan, who had just finished greeting the study commissary in the distance, ran over with a smile. When she saw her running over, she naturally attracted a lot of people's attention in an instant. Oh, what's the matter? Hearing her voice, Jiang Hai was stunned for a moment, then asked curiously. Tonight, I was so busy picking up food for you that I didn't have enough to eat. I don't care, you have to treat me to a good meal. Seeing Jiang Hai's puzzled gaze, Feng Yunshan pouted and said to Jiang Hai with a playful face. Oh, then we understand. We'll take our leave first. Hearing Feng Yunshan's words, although Fu Yuan still wanted to watch the fun here, Xianghua on the other side didn't drink too much, so he couldn't help but pull his clothes. Feeling that someone was pulling him, Fu Yuan looked at it and reacted. He nodded with a smile, then left with Xianghua. Looking at the two people who left, Jiang Hai couldn't help but open his mouth, then he looked at Feng Yunshan with some embarrassment. It's no problem to treat you to a meal, but tomorrow is the new year. It's so late now. There are no restaurants open. Otherwise, let's stay here. I'll treat you. Touching his hair, Jiang Hai said with a chuckle. No need to be so troublesome. It's expensive here and I can't eat well. I'm easy to raise. Let's go to your house and buy 2 bags of instant noodles on the way. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Feng Yunshan said with a smile. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai was also shocked. It seems that this progress is a bit fast. You want to go home with me so soon? Of course, do you still want to be in love with me for a few years? Feng Yunshan rolled her eyes at Jiang Hai. Feng Yunshan's words were already very clear. Jiang Hai was now pretending to be confused. At the moment she was no longer polite. She walked directly to Jiang Hai's side, took Jiang Hai's arm in his pocket, and then strode forward with Jiang Hai. Seeing this scene, the men who were originally very interested in Feng Yunshan tonight were really heartbroken, especially Tianqiu, who was surrounded by a group of women. Watching Jiang Hai and Feng Yunshan leave, his heart was bleeding. But as Jiang Hai said, this guy was really scared. He didn't dare to face Jiang Hai head-on. Moreover, even if he wanted to find trouble with Jiang Hai, he couldn't do it because these classmates knew that Jiang Hai was now in the United States. Even if he wanted to make things difficult for Jiang Hai, he couldn't find a chance, so he could only watch with his eyes and his heart bleeding. Soon a taxi turned from a distance. Feng Yunshan pulled Jiang Hai into the back seat. Looking at the taillights of the taxi speeding away, Tianqiu opened his mouth but found that he could hardly make a sound. However, while Tianqiu couldn't make a sound, someone made a sound. Looking in the direction where Jiang Hai and Feng Yunshan left, the class monitor, who was walking behind the crowd, took out her cell phone from her bag. Looking at the unfamiliar number on it, she hesitated for a moment and dialed it. At the same time, in the headquarters of the Qi group in the capital, "President, are you really not going back this year?" The assistant wearing a pair of black-rimmed glasses looked at Qi Li, who was standing in the office and looking at the world outside, and said to her carefully. At this time in this huge building, only the lights in Qi Li's office were still on. The lights in the other departments, except for the door guards, had been turned off. Although Qi Li was usually cold, she was still very good to the employees in her company. She never owed them salary, and the monthly bonus would only be more and not less. During the New Year's holidays, there was almost no overtime in the unit. Even if there was overtime, the overtime pay given was the best in the industry. Every day the company provided 2 meals, 1 lunch and 1 dinner. The taste was quite good and there was no charge. All of these were paid for by her. It could be said that the Qi group was very popular in the country. It was precisely because of this that Qi Li's position in the hearts of these employees had always been very high. This year, the company had already been on holiday yesterday. Some people who were far away from home and wanted to go home were even let go in advance. Such a boss was really rare in the industry. However, just as everyone was preparing to go home for the new year, Qi Li was still in this cold building. "I want to go back, but how can I go back? After I go back, what should I say if my mother asks about me and Jiang Hai? Instead of being unable to face it, it's better to stay in the capital with the excuse of being busy with work." With a sigh, Qi Li looked at the heavy traffic downstairs, which gave her a bigger headache. To be honest, she wanted to go home very much. She missed her mother, her younger sister, and her second younger sister. She didn't know whether she would come back this year or not. That damn Jiang Hai. "If you ask me, boss, you should just divorce him directly. This way, you can have an easier life." Hearing Qi Li's words, the assistant remembered the divorce agreement that was still hidden in Qi Li's desk. Ever since she took back the divorce agreement, Qi Li had not signed it. She didn't say that she didn't want to sign it. She had been putting it on hold. But if she kept putting it on hold, when would it come to an end? Divorce? Maybe. Hearing the assistant's words, Qi Li's eyes went blank again as she murmured softly. Just as her voice fell, a pleasant ringtone sounded beside her. This stunned Qi Li because this was her personal phone. Not many people knew this number. She casually glanced at it and found that she was not very familiar with this number. However, since she knew this number, it should be an acquaintance, so she picked it up. "Hello, is this Qi Li? It's me." Listening to the voice on the phone, Qi Li first tried to recall who the owner of this voice was. Then she put on a faint smile and said to the other side of the phone, "Oh, it's the class monitor. What's the matter?" Qi Li didn't know much about the class monitor, so her voice was very polite. "It's like this. We have a class reunion today. I sent you a text message a few days ago, but you didn't reply. You should be very busy. Well, I saw Jiang Hai today. He also came to the class reunion, but when he left with Feng Yunshan, a female classmate from our junior high school. I'm not saying this to provoke your relationship or anything like that. I just feel sorry for you if I don't tell you something. By the way, are you in Bing City now?" Hearing Qi Li's voice, the class monitor began to talk non-stop. Pregnant women had a lot of things to do, and obviously this guy had a lot of things to do. At first, Qi Li was not interested in the class reunion at all. She saw the text message, but she didn't reply. Because as Jiang Hai said, first, she didn't want to pretend to be a fool, second, she didn't want to sleep with someone else, and third, she didn't need to expand her network. Why would she go there? So she hesitated for a moment, and was about to interrupt the class monitor and hang up the phone. But just when she was about to say something, the class monitor mentioned Jiang Hai's name. As soon as she heard these two words, Qi Li's originally somewhat lazy eyes instantly became fierce. Especially when she heard that Jiang Hai left with another woman, her eyes shone with a cold light. "Thank you, class monitor. I'm not in Bing City now. Okay, I got it. I will talk to him. Sorry to trouble you." After exchanging a few pleasantries, Qi Li hung up the phone and let out a long sigh. This was the first time she heard news about Jiang Hai since the last time she spoke to him. But obviously this was not good news. "Help me prepare the earliest flight to Bing City. I want to go back now." Lu Li tightened her grip on the phone in her hand. She turned her head and looked at her assistant with a serious expression. Hearing Qi Li's words, the assistant was a little confused. However, her reaction was not slow. She immediately made a call, but the news she received was not very good. "There are no more flights for today. We are only left with the 6:30 a.m. flight tomorrow. It will arrive at Bing City around 8:30 a.m. Then let's take that flight. We will go to the airport hotel now." Qi Li helplessly sighed when she heard the assistant's words. "Okay, I have booked all the flights. But boss, why are you suddenly going back? Are you going back for the new year?" The assistant kept her phone and asked Qi Li curiously. She remembered that Qi Li was not willing to go back just a while ago. "No, we are going back to catch the adulterers." Chapter 175. Clang. With a sound, Jiang Hai's body unconsciously fell on the sofa, and the person who pushed him down was no one else but Feng Yunshan, who came back with him. But at this time, Feng Yunshan's face was a little red, and her originally beautiful face was also unusually coquettish at this time. Feng Yunshan's face was a little red, and her originally beautiful face was also unusually coquettish at this time. When they were in the restaurant, Feng Yunshan said that she wanted to go to Jiang Hai's house to eat. Since Jiang Hai did not refuse, it was impossible for him to go back to eat instant noodles like Feng Yunshan said. After Jiang Hai's taxi arrived downstairs, he found that the small restaurant near his home was still open, so he packed some food to go back to eat. As for Feng Yunshan, she went out for a walk when Jiang Hai went to buy food. When she came back, she was already carrying a beer and 2 bottles of red wine in her hand. Although it was not a good thing since she bought it, Jiang Hai would just drink it. However, he only drank half of it and Feng Yunshan had already made her move. She deliberately sat next to Jiang Hai. While drinking, she pulled her coat. Seeing this scene, Jiang Hai was stunned again. He wanted to stand up, but Feng Yunshan stood up first and pushed him heavily onto the sofa. Then she slowly pulled up her clothes. "Cough, you also finished eating. Otherwise, I will take you home first." Looking at Feng Yunshan in front of him, Jiang Hai didn't know where to put his eyes. He coughed and tried to stop it. "How is it, Jiang Hai? Are you excited?" However, looking at Jiang Hai's innocent look, Feng Yunshan's clothes were almost taken off. Feng Yunshan had a figure that was very impressive for a northeastern girl. She was extremely tall, 172 meters tall. In addition to her occupation, her figure was very good. Originally, it was not visible under the thick winter clothes. Now, as she took off her sweater and trousers, her white and delicate skin and proud curves were displayed in front of Jiang Hai. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, she did not answer but deliberately leaned down. For Asians, the existence of a pair of king weapons constantly attacked Jiang Hai's visual nerves. "Cough, cough, 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 this is not very good. Don't you have a boyfriend?" Hearing her words, Jiang Hai's eyes evaded her gaze even more. With a red face, he whispered, "Sai, my boyfriend, let's not talk about it. When he was young, he was crazy in that aspect. He was already not good in that aspect, but he still wanted me to be his mistress. Other than money, he couldn't give me anything. In fact, I also understand that when he looked for me, it was nothing more than for me to support him when he went out, but I was destined to be unpresentable, wasn't I? Just like now, during the new year, he will still choose to go home, and I will always be the person who is lonely outside." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Feng Yunshan gently bit her lips. Jiang Hai felt that she was speaking the truth. Then she sat down on Jiang Hai's lap. That proud existence was almost in front of Jiang Hai. The pink lace clothes made that existence looming and extremely tempting. Feeling the triple influence of sight, touch, and smell, Jiang Hai kept swallowing his saliva. "Why are you talking about him at this time? Are you not tempted by me at all?" Tilting her head, Feng Yunshan whispered in Jiang Hai's ear. This is more like it. After all, I can't even give you money." Swallowing another mouthful of saliva, Jiang Hai whispered, "I don't need your money. Let's not talk about this. How is my body? A little impulsive. As she spoke, Feng Yunshan leaned over. That pair of eyes that were like autumn waves kept glancing at Jiang Hai. This kind of words. Looking at the temptation in front of him, Jiang Hai didn't know what to say. Hey, you don't have to say it. You have already told me here. Seeing that Jiang Hai was still hesitating, Feng Yunshan had already slid down Jiang Hai's body. She gently stopped at the place where she needed to stop. She had already felt Jiang Hai's intentions. She didn't give Jiang Hai a chance to resist at all. She had already completely taken off Jiang Hai's pants. Seeing Jiang Hai's reaction, Feng Yunshan's face was very red. She didn't know if it was because she drank too much or because she was shy. I'm turning off the lights. Looking at Jiang Hai's completely stiff body, Feng Yunshan whispered while blowing in Jiang Hai's ear. After she finished speaking, she deliberately used her tongue to lick Jiang Hai's ear. Before Jiang Hai could react, she had already stood up, quickly turned off the lights in the living room, and then walked back to Jiang Hai's side. As her body leaned down, three indescribable things came to mind. An hour later, when the sound of the bed hitting the wall finally disappeared, Jiang Hai hugged Feng Yunshan's body and looked at the ceiling of his house weakly. There was some hesitation in his eyes. Someone said that men were actually the most hesitant, tangled, and contradictory creatures in the world. When they were asking for seeds, they were like dogs. After masturbating, they despised people for being ugly. Men always didn't like to think rationally at some critical moments. As the saying goes, you were a pervert before and after that, you were a saint. Now Jiang Hai also had this feeling. In the beginning, something happened between him, Maggie, and that unknown girl, but perhaps because the two of them weren't familiar with each other, Jiang Hai didn't feel any guilt in his heart. Instead, he quickly forgot about the two of them. But Feng Yunshan was different. She was his classmate. Moreover, taking a step back and seriously calculating it, regardless of whether she was the original wife or little alkali, she was someone who was taken. Wasn't it a little inappropriate for him to do this? Inappropriate? It was fine to do it with some women he wasn't familiar with, but this was his classmate. If he did it, it seemed a little inhumane. What's wrong? Why are you showing such a complicated expression? Under the moonlight, Feng Yunshan, whose body was covered with fine beads of sweat, arched in Jiang Hai's arms. After getting into a comfortable position, she squinted her eyes and whispered in Jiang Hai's ear. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai was stunned for a moment and then reacted. Although he couldn't do things like pulling out a bird ruthlessly, he hesitated for a moment and decided to tell the truth. Oh, I'm thinking, is it not good for us to do this? After all, don't think so much and don't have any burden. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also looked at the woman beside him under the moonlight. Just like when you first did it, think about it and feel that you have become a little impulsive. You have to deal with that impulse. Just like if there was no woman by your side, you would deal with it yourself. It's just that now I have become your hand. Feng Yunshan took Jiang Hai's big hand and gently pressed her left hand on Jiang Hai's right hand. Is it? Looking at Feng Yunshan's pretty face, Jiang Hai didn't know what to say at this time. Don't worry too much about this kind of thing. If you are so nervous, you may be exposed one day. Feng Yunshan said with a chuckle after kissing Jiang Hai's face gently. Feeling what Feng Yunshan said, Jiang Hai really didn't know how to express it this time. He could only turn his body and hug the girl in front of him like hugging a pillow. He leaned his head against her head and slowly fell asleep. As for Feng Yunshan, she also raised her head and glanced at Jiang Hai's face, which was not handsome. Perhaps in the beginning she approached Jiang Hai because she took a fancy to the financial resources behind Jiang Hai, but at this time she only felt that she was a woman. Thinking about it, for so many years she hadn't had a good sleep for a long time. But in Jiang Hai's arms she felt very at ease. As the breathing gradually calmed down, the two also fell asleep one after another. This night, Jiang Hai also slept very comfortably. But early the next morning, Jiang Hai was awakened by the tossing. He opened his eyes in a daze and found that Feng Yunshan was kneeling on the bed and constantly busy. Feeling that Jiang Hai moved, she also raised her head and looked at Jiang Hai. What are you doing so early in the morning? Picking up the phone, Jiang Hai glanced at it. It was just 9 o'clock in the morning. Last night, they finished dinner after 10 o'clock. It was 11 o'clock when they went home. When they started doing that, it was almost 1 o'clock. When they fell asleep, it was already about 3 o'clock. Even if Jiang Hai's physical fitness was good, after falling asleep, 6 hours of sleep was obviously not enough for him to get up on his own. Besides, today was New Year's Eve, it was a bit too early. This is called morning chew. I learned it from a sister. I haven't used it yet. You are the first one. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Feng Yunshan also raised her head and smiled sweetly at Jiang Hai. So I'm honored? Patting his forehead, Jiang Hai said with a chuckle. Of course you don't move. Enjoy it. Patting Jiang Hai's thigh, Feng Yunshan also lay down this time. Ding 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 ding. Just as Jiang Hai was feeling the morning service that he had never felt before, the doorbell of his house rang quickly. Listening to the harsh doorbell, Jiang Hai was shocked and Feng Yunshan was also shocked. Who is it? Scratching his head, Jiang Hai hasn't been home for several months. Who is it? Coming up and ringing the doorbell like this during the new year? Signaling Feng Yunshan not to worry, Jiang Hai stood up first. After putting on his sweater and pants, he opened the door. When Jiang Hai opened the door, a pretty face came into Jiang Hai's eyes. Their eyes met and time stopped at this moment. Chapter 176. It's you? The two people, separated by a door frame, looked at each other for about 10 seconds. Jiang Hai slowly said a sentence, and it was precisely because of Jiang Hai's words that the person outside the door woke up. It's me. The person outside the door straightened her clothes, coughed softly, and looked into the room. Listening to this soft and stubborn female voice, Jiang Hai laughed at himself. How did she find this place? Jiang Hai, who is it? Just as the two people looked at each other but had nothing to say, Feng Yunshan, who was in the room, also came out wrapped in a blanket. Bing City was located in the northernmost part of Wuxia. Naturally there was heating. No matter how low the temperature outside was, the temperature in the room was always 26 degrees above zero, so it was not cold to wrap a blanket. When she saw the woman standing at the door, her sixth sense told her that this woman might not be easy to deal with. When the woman saw her, a murderous look flashed in her eyes, but she suppressed it instantly. Oh, it's nothing. You go back to the house first. What's the matter? President Qi? Feeling the two women's eyes cross-fire more than 10 times in midair, Jiang Hai immediately spoke. After sending Feng Yunshan into the house, Jiang Hai also looked at the woman outside the door and said, yes, this woman was none other than Jiang Hai's nominal wife, ex-wife Qili. Today Qili was obviously not in a good mood and state. It was understandable. Although the company was on the right track, recently her mother had been asking her to go home for the new year, but she did not know how to explain to her mother. At the same time, after learning the news that Jiang Hai was back last night, she almost did not sleep that night. She caught the earliest flight back to Bing City this morning. After getting off the plane, she went to Jiang Hai's house. It would be strange if she was in a good mood. If one looked carefully, they would find that this woman's eyes were bloodshot. I'll give you 10 minutes. I'll wait for you in the car downstairs. After taking a deep breath, Qili suppressed the nameless fire in her heart, then looked at Jiang Hai and said word by word. She then turned around and went downstairs. Psycho. Looking at Qili's leaving figure, Jiang Hai couldn't help but whisper. Originally he didn't want to talk to her, but after considering that they really should have a face-to-face talk, Jiang Hai shook his head and let her go. Jiang Hai, that was... At this moment, Feng Yunshan, who heard the sound of the door closing, also poked her small head out of the room and asked Jiang Hai curiously. Oh, my ex-wife. I don't know what to say. Why don't you wait for me? I'll go down first. Looking at the girl who slept with him last night, Jiang Hai really didn't know how to explain. Oh, it's okay. You do your thing. I should go home too. I didn't go back last night. My mom called me several times. Feng Yunshan smiled and stuck out her tongue. Then she didn't mind Jiang Hai's gaze and changed her clothes in the room. It was late last night. Although there were lights, Jiang Hai still didn't see Feng Yunshan's figure clearly. Now that he saw it, Jiang Hai couldn't help but give a thumbs up in his heart. Feng Yunshan's figure was really great. She had a height of 1.72 meters, long curly hair, and exquisite facial features that had already been introduced, which formed the most eye-catching face. Her figure was even better. Perhaps it was because she had been training all year round, but there were some faint lines of muscle on her body. However, it didn't look very manly. Instead, it added a kind of heroic spirit. Her extremely long legs, coupled with her charming buttocks, a waist without a trace of fat, and an E-grade upper body, were all sharp weapons that attracted the attention of men. My figure is not so easy to build. Although my face has been injected, this figure is trained bit by bit. It's pretty good. Feeling Jiang Hai's burning gaze, Feng Yunshan said heartily. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai was a little embarrassed. He couldn't help but withdraw his gaze and quickly put on his clothes. However, it would take a lot of time for a woman to clean up. After Jiang Hai put on his clothes, she still spent more than 10 minutes to put on her clothes. This was still under the condition that she didn't put on makeup. When Jiang Hai and Feng Yunshan went downstairs, it was already 20 minutes later. Just downstairs, Jiang Hai saw a Bentley Mulsanne parked in the distance. Jiang Hai was very familiar with this car. It was Feng Yunshan's car. When they got married, this car was used as the wedding car. However, Jiang Hai didn't rush forward. Instead, he went to the roadside first. After helping Feng Yunshan get a taxi, he came to the back of the car and gently knocked on the window. "Get in the car." The window slowly rolled down, revealing Qi Li's iceberg-like pretty face. She said coldly to Jiang Hai, "Forget about getting in the car. If you have something to say, just say it. I have to see my parents." Shaking his head, Jiang Hai rejected Qi Li's words and said with a serious face. To be honest, Jiang Hai really didn't want to have anything to do with this woman. "I'll go with you. If you are a man, get in the car. Don't be so wishy-washy." Hearing that Jiang Hai rejected her words again, Qi Li's eyes were wide, and she said with a heroic face. Feeling Qi Li's aura, Jiang Hai's mouth twitched disdainfully. "You didn't go when my mother was gone. Why are you talking about going now? If there is nothing else, I will leave." Jiang Hai shook his head. Although he didn't care about other women, at least he wouldn't be so tough. But he really couldn't be soft-hearted to Qi Li. "I want to talk to you about our marriage. Get in the car." Seeing that Jiang Hai finished speaking and turned to leave, Qi Li was also a little anxious. She immediately opened the car door and said loudly to Jiang Hai. Hearing that she finally got to the main topic, Jiang Hai's footsteps paused, then he nodded and walked to the other side of the car and sat in the back seat. When Qi Li saw Jiang Hai get in the car, although she was a little unhappy, she also sat back. "Master, please cremate her." After the car door was closed, Jiang Hai patted the driver sitting in the driver's seat and said to him. After hearing Jiang Hai's words, the driver looked at Qi Li's assistant in the passenger's seat. He couldn't make the decision. "Listen to him. Let's go." At this time, Qi Li, who was sitting steadily, also said to the person in front. After hearing Qi Li's words, the car slowly started and drove to the crematorium. "If you have something to say, just say it." The car sped slowly on the road, and the atmosphere in the car was a little awkward. After thinking for a while, Jiang Hai decided to start the conversation. After all, he was a man, so he thought that he should start the conversation first. "This year, I hope that you can accompany me home." Hearing that Jiang Hai finally spoke, Qi Li also looked out of the window and said coldly. She really didn't know how to face Jiang Hai now, so she could only look outside. "President Qi, I think you may be disappointed. We are divorced, aren't we?" Glancing at Qi Li sitting next to him, Jiang Hai scratched his head, thought for a moment and said to Qi Li, "As long as my signature is not on that paper, then we are not divorced. You are my legal husband. Even if you go all over the world, you can't change that." Hearing Jiang Hai mention the divorce agreement, Qi Li's words were cold. "Oh, do you think I still don't understand the law? How long have we been married? How long have we been separated? Did anything happen between us? I think you know as well as I do. The reason why I applied for a divorce and gave you an agreement is to save your face. Let's part on good terms." "Well, we didn't get together at all, so it's better to part on good terms. If you make up your mind not to sign, then I will go to the court to apply for a divorce. I don't think it will be very troublesome." Hearing Qi Li's words, Jiang Hai's eyes narrowed. When he needed help the most, he was not threatened by others, let alone now. "Yes, you can apply for a divorce at any time, but don't forget that after the divorce is confirmed, you will give me half of your property in Boston." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Qi Li's voice seemed to ease a little and she said slowly, "My money, why should I give it to you? Does it have anything to do with you? If I give you the things in Boston, you should also give me half of your money." Hearing Qi Li's words, Jiang Hai frowned and said loudly. Winthrop's manor is Jiang Hai's lifeblood, and now no one knows the value of the manor better than he does. Not to mention anything else, the cow alone is worth more than $1 billion. Even if he was beaten to death, he would not be willing to give half of the money to Qi Li. "Oh, you still say you understand the law? Are you sure? Your manor in Boston was bought by you when our marriage was still going on, which is our common property. My shares were inherited from my father, and my father died before we got married. When I inherited the property, it was also before we got married. That is to say, my money is premarital property, and your manor is postmarital property. No matter where you go to sue, as long as we don't divorce by agreement, half of your manor is mine." Maybe she was stimulated by Jiang Hai's words. Qi Li also turned over with red eyes, staring at Jiang Hai and explaining the law to him word by word. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai licked his lips. He didn't know whether Qi was telling the truth or not, but he vaguely felt that she didn't deceive him. Even if he didn't get half, even if he got 1/10, Jiang Hai would still feel distressed. Looking at Jiang Hai's speechless look, Qi felt refreshed for no reason. She felt that since she learned that Jiang Hai ran away a few months ago, she was always angry when facing Jiang Hai. Now that she had won back one round, her heart was really relaxed for no reason. Looking at Jiang Hai's speechless look, she smiled. Chapter 177. Do you understand now? Whether we divorce or not, it's up to me, not you. Gently knocking on the handle of the car, Qi Li's originally ice-cold face showed a smile, and then she said softly to Jiang Hai, "Then you're not going to sign it?" Lowering his head, Jiang Hai didn't know what to say now. If he really had to give up half of the manor to divorce, then he could grit his teeth and sign it. If he didn't sign it now, then he would be in trouble. "No, I can sign it. I'm not interested in your manor in Boston, but I have a request." Seeing that Jiang Hai seemed to have made up his mind, Qi Li smiled. She had a firm grasp of Jiang Hai's mentality. Although the two were the same age in terms of social experience and negotiation skills, Jiang Hai was dozens of streets behind Qi Li. From the beginning, she knew that Jiang Hai wanted to take the initiative. In this case, she needed to be heavy-handed. Sure enough, with a few words, she suppressed Jiang Hai's original anger. At this time, with Jiang Hai's stubborn temper, it was estimated that the fish would die and the net would break. Qi Li came to find Jiang Hai, first, not to break her own net, and second, not to catch a dead fish. After testing Jiang Hai's bottom line, she wanted to give Jiang Hai hope, a sweet date. Sure enough, when Qi Li's voice fell, Jiang Hai's eyes were once again filled with hope as he looked at her. "I want you to go to my house for the new year tonight. After the new year, I will consider signing it." Looking at Jiang Hai's eyes, Qi Li's heart was filled with loneliness and helplessness. She really didn't want to play such tricks on the person who was nominally the closest to her. But it seemed that if she didn't play these tricks, she and Jiang Hai would have to completely break off contact with each other. Whether it was because of her mother or because of other reasons, she couldn't break off with Jiang Hai now. Hearing Qi Li's words, Jiang Hai looked at her doubtfully. "Are you serious?" "Of course, although I, Qi Li, am not a man, when have I not taken my words seriously?" Seeing Jiang Hai's hopeful eyes, Qi Li nodded seriously, but her eyes were always a little evasive. "Okay, I'll believe you." However, Jiang Hai didn't notice her gaze but patted his leg. As long as he could completely get rid of this woman's shadow, he didn't mind going again. Anyway, it was just a social event. "Okay, then let's go burn paper first." Seeing that Jiang Hai agreed, Qi Li also nodded and sat in her seat without saying anything. Jiang Hai was still in a state of excitement. He was finally going to get a divorce. Well, other people were very excited when they got married, but Jiang Hai was obviously different from the ordinary other people. The car drove very fast and it didn't take long for them to arrive at the crematorium. Jiang Hai deliberately stopped the car first, bought a lot of paper money and blood, and went to his parents' place. Although the grave couldn't be moved because it hadn't been 3 years, Jiang Hai specially gave some money to the people in charge of cleaning here when he came back last time and asked them to help take care of the ashes. Now that he had come over to take a look, it was true that these people had taken good care of them. There was not a single speck of ash on the urn or the table. This made Jiang Hai very satisfied. Then he lit incense for his parents and sat there, whispering some small talk. At least Qi Li, as she had said, also came over. Although she did not speak, she also stood there quietly. Looking at the photo of Jiang Hai's parents, she also remembered a long time ago when she was young. She remembered the braised pork that Jiang Hai's mother made. She remembered how Jiang Hai fought with other boys in school because of her. She remembered how Jiang Hai wanted to borrow her homework to copy. She remembered how shocked Jiang Hai was when he found out that she was leaving. She suddenly realized that her relationship with Jiang Hai had been intertwined for more than 10 years, but she didn't know when it started, but they gradually drifted apart. When her mother mentioned that she wanted to marry Jiang Hai, the only other feeling she had for Jiang Hai other than disgust was a boy she knew when she was young. That was all. Those scenes, those stories, they were all hidden in the depths of his memories. Now that she and Jiang Hai were like this, she didn't know if she should blame Jiang Hai or blame herself. If she had accepted her fate at that time, if she had treated their relationship seriously, if she hadn't left Bing City, but it was meaningless to talk about these now because things had already happened. She had to find a way to change things for the better. After sitting there for about half an hour, Jiang Hai stood up. Then he took the paper money, ingots and banknotes he bought for his parents to the stove at the back. This time, Jiang Hai didn't ask Qili to help. She didn't know how to help even if he asked her. Jiang Hai burned all these things himself. With the fire burning brightly, Jiang Hai and Qili left. "Let's go now," Jiang Hai said to Qili as he patted the dust off his body and got into the car. "Go? Where are we going?" Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Qili, who hadn't said a word, crossed her long legs in the car and looked outside quietly. "Didn't you say you were going to see your mother?" Hearing Qili's words, Jiang Hai was stunned. "You didn't need to go?" Then he was quite willing. Qili rolled her eyes at Jiang Hai. She pointed at the clothes he was wearing and said with an unhappy face, "You're going to wear this? Damn, it's a brand Archaeopteryx. This is not cheaper than a suit. At least it's not cheaper than those white-collar suits in your company." Hearing Qili's words, Jiang Hai was anxious. Why were people always talking about his clothes? This has nothing to do with whether it's cheap or expensive. Wearing a suit at my house is a form of respect for my mother. Moreover, is Archaeopteryx really expensive? With your current net worth, you still have the nerve to say this? Other than your watch that's not bad, I don't see what's good about it. She pointed at the watch on Jiang Hai's wrist. Okay, this watch did help Jiang Hai gain a lot of attention. "Yo, an expert. Do you want me to treat you to my homemade shredded fried noodles?" Hearing Qili's words, Jiang Hai smiled. "I'm not in the mood to chat with you. Change." Rolling her eyes at Jiang Hai, Qili said unhappily. "Then I'll go back and change into sportswear. I only brought 3 sets of clothes." When he heard Qili say that his clothes were not good, Jiang Hai grinned. He hated wearing suits the most. It had nothing to do with whether it was cheap or expensive. His coat, the one made of mountain lion skin, cost more than $6,000, which was equivalent to more than $40,000. Although it was not comparable to top brands such as Burberry, it was still better than the average luxury brand. After all, it was worth a lot of money. "You win. Let's go and buy it directly." Looking at Jiang Hai's nonchalant expression, Qili took a deep breath. This Jiang Hai was really shameless. But she had no choice. She could only tell the driver in front that today, not only her and her mother but also her second uncle and his family. So Jiang Hai couldn't go today. Even if he wanted to go, he couldn't embarrass her. To her, spending tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands to buy a suit for Jiang Hai was not a big deal. Although Jiang Hai might not be willing to spend so much money. The driver was very familiar with Bing City's roads. In Bing City there were 2 places that sold luxury goods. One was Mikhail and the other was Zhuozhan. This time they went straight to the latter. After they arrived, Jiang Hai became a model and walked around with Qili. Originally, Qili didn't know much about Jiang Hai's body. After all, she had never seen Jiang Hai's body before. But today she found out that Jiang Hai's body was really good. She wondered if he had always been like this or had changed recently. After walking around for more than an hour, when both of them came out, Jiang Hai had changed into a new suit. As Jiang Hai would rather die than wear a suit, Qili chose a Versace suit for him. It was a knitted sweater inside and a sweater outside. It looked very casual, but Jiang Hai felt that it was quite tight. His belt, pants and even shoes were changed. As Jiang Hai would rather die than wear leather shoes, he felt that wearing leather shoes was too uncomfortable. In the end, he changed into a pair of casual shoes. But he did not let Jiang Hai wear his hiking shoes. "Can we go now?" Jiang Hai loosened his collar. He felt uncomfortable wearing this kind of slim-fit suit. Qili looked at Jiang Hai casually. She was still not satisfied with what Jiang Hai was wearing. As the saying goes, clothes make the man. But Jiang Hai had been wearing casual clothes for too long, and he had a wild aura. Compared to those successful people, he was already out of place. Luckily, he was not wearing a suit. If not, he would feel even more uncomfortable. "Not now. We still need to buy some New Year's gifts for my mother, like food and necessities." "I don't know about necessities. But if it's food, follow me." Thinking for a moment, since he wanted to give a gift, the best thing to eat was naturally the beef from Jiang Hai's manor. He had sent a lot of it to Bingqing. Now he only needed to go to Fuyuan's house to get it. Although she was curious why Jiang Hai didn't need to eat, Qili didn't directly refuse this time. She vaguely guessed that Jiang Hai probably wanted to give her the beef from his manor. Even if the beef wasn't very good, her mother would still be very happy. Then the 2 of them got in the car again and went to Jiangbei Fuyuan's house. When they knocked on the door of Fuyuan's house, Fuyuan had just woken up. When he saw Jiang Hai, he started to talk nonsense. "Oh brother, you are still awake? Did that little vixen, Cuff, sister-in-law is also here? When he saw Qi Li walking in with Jiang Hai, the smile on his face froze. Alright, stop talking nonsense. Where's the beef? I want to send some to Qi Li's mother. Seeing Fu Yuan's awkward expression, Jiang Hai smiled and said to him. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Fu Yuan immediately brought Jiang Hai to his fridge. Although the best way to keep this kind of beef was to be cold, if the conditions did not allow, it could be frozen. Although it would lose some of its texture, it would still taste good. Jiang Hai was very confident in his beef. He casually chose 2 pieces of Tianjin beef and left. After leaving Fu Yuan's house, both of them got into the car and headed to their destination. Chapter 178. Ding Dong. Along with the ringing of the doorbell, a series of hurried footsteps could be heard from the villa. As the door opened, a young girl dressed in maid attire poked her head out. When she saw the 2 people outside the door, her eyes couldn't help but widen, her face full of disbelief. What's wrong, Shui? Don't you recognize me? Looking at the girl's surprised look, Qi Li, who was outside the door, revealed a rare smile and said to the girl inside the door. Hearing Qi Li's words, the girl suddenly shouted. Miss Son-in-law, come in. Madam, Miss and Son-in-law are back. After hurriedly letting Jiang Hai and Qi Li into the house, she ran into the house and shouted loudly. Hearing the girl's shout, Jiang Hai also chuckled. For this Xiui, Jiang Hai had seen her several times. Speaking of this child, she was also a pitiful person. She was 4 years younger than Jiang Hai and was 23 years old this year. Her father was also an old employee of Qi Li's father's company. His surname was Zheng. When he just started the company, it was not stable. So all year round they worked hard in the capital. It was not easy for them to come back during the new year, so they must take the child out to play. When Xiui was 12 years old, her family went out to play. As a result, they had an accident on the highway. Her parents died on the spot. Although she did not suffer any injuries, she was still scared. Since then, there were some problems with her brain. Because Qi Li's father pitied the child, he took her back home and raised her with his younger daughter. They had always treated her as their own daughter, but Xiui did not think so. She always thought that she owed Qi Li's family a lot of things, so after she turned 19, she stopped going to school because she knew that she wouldn't be able to learn anything. Instead of wasting the family's money, she might as well focus on being a servant at home and fight to do all the chores. Although she didn't do well at first, her personality was extremely stubborn. Qi Li's family had told her many times and they didn't want her to work, but she was determined to do so. In the blink of an eye, 4 years had passed. Everyone in the family had gotten used to the way she dressed. However, if anyone dared to treat her as a real servant, that person would be in trouble. Because to Qi Li and the others, Xiui would always be their third sister. Jiang Hai had seen Xiumoth several times, but not when he was a child but when he grew up. After all, he was going to marry Qi Li, so he must have come here many times. He also approved of Xiumoth from the bottom of his heart. Under the guidance of the other servants, Jiang Hai first changed into slippers and then walked into the room with the meat. As soon as he walked in, he saw 4 people sitting in the living room. There were 2 men and 2 women, 2 old men and 2 young men. The 2 old men were sitting on the sofa while the 2 young men were a man and a woman. The man was sitting on a sofa not far away playing with his phone. As for the woman, she was sitting beside him. She looked at the man with the corner of her eyes, and then looked at Qi Li and Jiang Hai who came in. As for Qi Li's mother, after hearing the sound, she had already stood up from the sofa and welcomed them with a happy face. You know, usually she might not see her eldest daughter more than a few times a year. As for her son-in-law, she almost never saw him. Especially in the past 6 months, it seemed that Jiang Hai did not come even once. Mom, Happy New Year. When he saw Qi Li's mother, Jiang Hai subconsciously wanted to call her aunt, but as soon as the word came out, he was kicked by Qi Li who was next to him. Jiang Hai also knew that he had to put on a show, so he shouted awkwardly. But when he heard this, the man who was playing games there couldn't help but laugh disdainfully. What? You don't even know how to call your mother? Mom, when did you become a Tartar? Casually putting away his mobile phone, the man said with a look of contempt. Hearing his words, the faces of Qi Li and Qi Li's mother changed. As for the 2 middle-aged men on the other side, they just smiled and said nothing. It could be seen that in Qi Li's family, they were also not very optimistic about Jiang Hai. If it was half a year ago, maybe Jiang Hai would endure it, but now it was impossible for him to endure it. Hey Mom, when did we have guests in our house? It's New Year's Eve, why don't you stay at home and enjoy the new year? How can you visit us on New Year's Eve? You are really ignorant. Hearing this guy's words, Jiang Hai didn't even care about them, but directly said to Qi Li's mother. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Qi Li couldn't help but look at Jiang Hai, but she didn't say anything. As for Qi Li's mother, she also looked at the person who she had watched grow up from childhood. This guy really dares to say anything. What are you talking about? Who is an outsider? When the four people here heard Jiang Hai's words, their faces immediately changed. When the woman's son was talking about Jiang Hai, she pretended not to hear it, but now that Jiang Hai retorted, she was the first to stand up. Auntie, what's your surname? Hearing this woman's words, Jiang Hai retorted without saying anything. You. When she heard Jiang Hai say her surname, the woman couldn't help but be speechless, because she was also an outsider. Okay, why are you guys quarreling on New Year's Eve? It's not easy for Xiaoli and Jiang Hai to come back. Hurry up and sit down. At this time, the man also put on a stern face and said to the people in front of him with a serious face. Hearing his words, the few people around him didn't move. As for Jiang Hai, he curled his lips. You said not to quarrel and you said not to quarrel? Who do you think you are? Just now, when your wife and son were shouting, why didn't they see you shouting? You had the upper hand, so why are you quarreling? Shame on you. Just as he was about to talk back, he was pulled by Qi Li, and Jiang Hai temporarily closed his mouth. Jiang Hai had seen this family a few times. The man was called Qi Yuanlong, Qi Li's second uncle, and also her father's biological brother. However, compared to Qi Li's father, this guy couldn't do anything and didn't leave anything behind. If he didn't have the company's shares and dividends every year, he might have starved to death if he was allowed to indulge in debauchery. The woman next to him was called Zhang Yu, a third-tier celebrity who was 10 years younger than him. She was raped 10 years ago and only became a full-time employee 6 years ago. The young man next to him was called Qi Zhengtao, Qi Yuanlong's son. He was 23 years old this year and was also a playboy who indulged in debauchery. His biggest wish was to inherit the company, and he was the kind of person who was more ambitious than the sky. When Qi Li's father was still alive, he had let him enter the company, but no matter what he did, he was muddle-headed. Later, in order to prevent him from destroying the company, he gave him some money to start a business, but the result was even worse. He lost money no matter what he did and was extremely incompetent. However, he still insisted that he was quite good, and that he was just unlucky. If he increased the investment in him, he would definitely succeed. For such a person, Jiang Hai could only laugh. As for the woman next to Qi Zhengtao, her name was Lucy and she could be considered his fiancée. She was the daughter of the general manager of a subsidiary company of the Qi Group. She was a very good girl, beautiful and knowledgeable, but it seemed like a fresh flower inserted in cow dung. Come. Sit down. You haven't been here for a long time. In order to avoid the awkwardness, Qi Li's mother held Jiang Hai's hand and walked to the sofa with a smile. As she walked, she complained to Jiang Hai. That's right. It's not easy for your mother to stay here alone. Qi Li still has work to do in the capital, and you have nothing to do in Bing City. Why don't you come here every few days to visit? It's not right of you to do this. Hearing Qi Li's mother's words, Qi Yuanlong took a sip of the tea in front of him and said slowly to Jiang Hai. He had the demeanor of an elder. Mom, I haven't been in China recently. I went abroad and bought a manor. This is the meat of the cattle raised in my manor. I brought some over for you to try. Hearing this person's words, Jiang Hai didn't even pay attention to her. Instead, he continued to smile and said to Qi Li's mother. At the same time, he also handed over the beef in his hand. Oh, you don't want to live in the city and go to the countryside to raise cattle? Why raise cattle? Water buffaloes. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Qi Zhengtao, who had just been rebutted, sat up with a mocking expression and said to Jiang Hai. Don't talk about it like that. I don't think that people in the city are the same as people in the countryside. Whether it's the city or the countryside, they all rely on their own hands to make a living and support their families. It's better than those who live there every day. Glancing at Qi Zhengtao, Jiang Hai said disdainfully. Qi Zhengtao stood up immediately after hearing Jiang Hai's words. He thought that he was a talented, knowledgeable and very capable person. What he hated the most was others mentioning something he didn't do. Especially when these words came from Jiang Hai, whom he had always looked down on, which made him even angrier. To put it bluntly, in their opinion, Jiang Hai was a person who married into the family. What right did he have to speak? Okay, stop talking. Second brother, it's good for young people to be hot-tempered, but this year is New Year's Eve. If you don't want to spend New Year's here, then go back. Seeing that Qi Zhengtao was about to say something unpleasant, Qi Li's mother spoke at this time. As the head of the family, Qi Li's mother's words were extremely important. Moreover, she had always been very protective of Jiang Hai. Of course, this was also because of Qi Li's relationship. She immediately said to Qi Yuanlong's family with a cold face, "Sister-in-law, it's a misunderstanding. Jingtao was just joking. Young people can't take it seriously. By the way, big brother should be here soon." Seeing that Qi Li's mother was serious, Qi Yuanlong immediately said with a smile and changed the topic. Chapter 179. Knock knock knock. Just when the atmosphere was getting awkward, someone knocked on the door from outside. After hearing the sound, Xiao Yi quickly walked out of the room and opened the door of the villa. Facing the cold wind, 3 people walked in from outside. One of them was older than Qi Li, and the other 2 were about the same age as Jiang Hai and Qi Li. However, the moment the 3 of them walked into the villa, Qi Li, who was eating oranges, and Qi Li's mother, who already had a very bad expression, instantly changed their expressions. Among them, Qi Li stood up immediately. "What are you doing here? You're not welcome here. Get out." Qi Li pointed at one of the men who came in with a smile on his face. Without any courtesy, she pointed at him and reprimanded him. "Hey, eldest niece, he's a guest. How can you be so rude?" Hearing her words, the person walking at the front pulled a long face and said impatiently, "I'll say it again. You're not welcome here. Get out." However, Qi Li acted as if she didn't hear the man and continued to say, "Sister-in-law, is this how you treat your guests? After all, there are no men in your family. Changwu is my guest. If you chase him away, that means you're chasing me away too." Seeing that Lu Li didn't give him any face, the man's face turned a little ugly. He knew how stubborn his niece was. At this time, it was better to clear things up with Qi Li's mother. "My attitude is the same as Xiao Li's. Big brother, don't forget that our family's crisis has just passed. If you stand with our enemy now, we're not the ones who are in the wrong." Qi Li's mother stood up gently from the sofa. Her face was also ugly. The big brother they were talking about was originally called Qi Song. He could be considered Qi Li's grandfather. However, they weren't blood-related. Qi Song's father was Qi Li's grandfather's brother. They could be considered relatives from the previous generation. Logically speaking, since they had already separated from the family, Qi Song shouldn't be able to control Qi Li's family. However, in fact, this guy was the most scheming one. If he was really like Qi Yuanlong and his family were all good for nothings, it would be a good thing for Qi Li. Even if she had to use money to support them, it wouldn't matter as long as they didn't cause trouble for her. However, the bad thing was that this guy was quite capable. Qi Song was originally the first person in their family to do business. When Qi Li's father started his business, he had also followed this cousin. Although Qi Song's father's business, Qi didn't fail, although Qi Song's business, he didn't make any progress. This made him very unhappy. He always thought that everything in the Qi family should belong to him, not like now. "What do you mean by enemy? Sister-in-law, what are you talking about? I'm also very sad about what happened to Qi Li's father, but we all know that Qi Li's father died of a heart attack. What does this have to do with Changguo? If you insist on blaming the Yin family, then it's in Sun and in Zhang Yong's business. What does this have to do with Changguo, who didn't take power at that time? Moreover, Changguo has been living a hard life these years. We all know about his relationship with Shaoli. Is there anyone who cares more than him?" Hearing Qi Li's mother's words, Qi Song's face changed and he started to talk nonsense seriously. "Uncle, I'll call you uncle now, but don't take advantage of your seniority. Don't tell me that you don't know why my father suddenly had a heart attack. If it weren't for this guy, our family would still be reunited and wouldn't be like this now." Hearing Qi Song's shameless words, Qi Li's face changed. She pointed at Qi Song and said seriously, "Sister, you're wrong. Your father originally had a heart attack. Besides, the failure of the acquisition was just an accident. Besides, didn't you also benefit from it? Now the Lu family is still in power in your family. Now that Changguo has the intention to come and apologize, although that matter has nothing to do with him, it's also a matter of attitude. We should be lenient whenever possible. It's easy to make enemies. This time, Changguo also came here with a cooperation plan. We might as well listen to it." Hearing Qi Li's words, Lu Song was a little embarrassed. "Taking advantage of your seniority. How could you say these words so casually?" While Qi Song's expression turned ugly, another person behind him stood up and said with a smile, "Don't worry." This person was called Qi Liangkai, Qi Song's son. He was 35 years old this year. Like Qi Song, he was very ambitious. Originally, when Qi Li's father died, his family had the highest voice to take over the Qi family. After all, Qi Li was a woman and she was not old at that time. Unexpectedly, Qi Li's mother was decisive enough. Qi Li was directly married off to Jiang Hai. A married woman was obviously more trustworthy than an unmarried one, especially when the person she was marrying did not have any influence. Just like that, Qi Song's family said goodbye to their original throne. This made them very uneasy and unhappy. After more than a year of hard work, Qi Li seemed to be more and more stable in the company. It was said that wealth moved people's hearts. In order to control the company's lifeline, it seemed that they would not hesitate to cooperate with their enemies. Hearing Qi Liangsai's words, Qi Li and her mother's faces became very ugly. They were not politicians, but even politicians had a bottom line. Now what did Qi Song mean? Cooperation. They were in a situation where they would not stop until one of them died. Who would cooperate with whom? Just when the mother and daughter were flushed because of anger and did not know what to say, a joking voice came from behind. Although the voice was not loud, it clearly entered everyone's ears. Hearing this voice, everyone looked back and naturally saw Jiang Hai sitting there at a glance. Hey, I always thought that my skin was thick enough, but I did not expect that there is someone in this world who is thicker than me. Qi Li, today I have learned something new. What do you mean, boy? Facing Qi Li, Qi Liangkai might take care of a little, but facing Jiang Hai, who was a good-for-nothing in their eyes, they were not so polite. Did I not make it clear enough? You are really shameless enough to bully an orphan and a widow. You have the face to do that, right? Cooperation? Cooperation, my ass. In this world there are two kinds of hatred that cannot be resolved. The hatred of killing one's father and the hatred of stealing one's wife. You keep talking so much nonsense, but you can't erase the principle that my father-in-law died because of him. This hatred, unless our family members are all dead, will never be resolved. With a disdainful smile, Jiang Hai said slowly and fearfully. What qualifications do you have to say such things here? Don't forget your identity. Seeing Jiang Hai's sarcastic remarks, Qi Song's face became ugly. With a straight face he shouted angrily at Jiang Hai. Who am I? I am Qi Li's husband now. This is my family. And you, who are you, uncle? I'm sorry. We seem to have separated. Our family's business has nothing to do with you. Qi's shareholders? Then our family is like this. If you don't want to hold our family shares anymore, how much is your shares worth? I will buy them at a premium of 20%. Do you want to do it or not? Hearing Qi Song's words, Qi Li and Qi Li's mother needed to give face to these guys, but Jiang Hai did not need to. His main business was in Boston. It was a manor and he played with hard currency. He only had 20,000 cows, and he had no plans to export them to China. And even if he did, these people could not order him around. Jiang Hai was very unyielding now. With a trembling right hand, Qi Song pointed at Jiang Hai in disbelief. Was this something that the guy who married into the family dared to say? He still remembered that when they first got married, Jiang Hai was trembling in fear when he saw them. He absolutely did not dare to say a word. What was the situation now? He was going to rebel. Uncle Qi, don't be angry. Jiang Hai, right? Let me introduce myself. I am Zhangwu, Qi Li's boyfriend. You just said that there are two kinds of hatred in this world that cannot be resolved. Then, does that mean that the hatred between us cannot be resolved? Seeing Lu Song being humiliated by Jiang Hai, even his son Qi Liangkai did not know what to say. After all, Jiang Hai's words were very unreasonable. He did not care about feelings or feelings. He did not care if you were unhappy or not. Anyway, he was not like this. If you were unhappy, you could sell your shares to him and get lost. That was all. Of course, they did not think that Jiang Hai had such strength, but Qi Li did. Therefore, at this time, the two of them did not know what to say. Looking at the awkward situation, and Zhangwu walked out and looked at Jiang Hai with narrowed eyes. Yes, although I don't know which country you are from, Qi Li married me. It's that simple. I have to thank you for giving such a beautiful woman to me. She is beautiful, talented, and knows how to care for others. Our wedding night was... Ouch, why did you pinch me? Jiang Hai had heard about Zhangwu a long time ago, but he had never met him. Although he now wanted to get rid of Qi Li as soon as possible, he did not want to lose face. He wanted to anger this damn guy to death. However, before he could finish his sentence, Qi Li pinched him. If he continued, he would become the target of severe punishment. Ahem, you can imagine the rest yourself. Seeing Qi Li's face turn red due to embarrassment and anger, Jiang Hai also knew that it was not good to say too much. Therefore, he waved his hand and said to Zhangwu, whose face was already green. There was nothing better than being intimate with a man's beloved woman in front of his face. Of course, Jiang Hai was not a pervert. However, being able to make Zhangwu unhappy made him very happy. It seems that I came a little presumptuous today. Goodbye. And Zhangwu gritted his teeth and forced out a few words. Then he turned around and left the Qi family's house. As for Qi Song and Qi Liangkai, after looking at each other, they also left. As for Qi Wulong's family, looking at the current situation, they probably did not have the leisure to celebrate the new year and found an excuse to leave. Chapter 180. I didn't expect that Jiang Hai would dare to ruin our plan. Walking out of Qi Li's house, Qi Liangkai couldn't help but wave his fist. This time, they originally came to discuss Qi Li's house, but they didn't expect that they would be the ones being disgorged in the end. Liangkai, this Jiang Hai is just a clown. You don't need to worry too much. What I'm worried about now is whether it's Qi Li's idea for him to stand up now. Qi Song said slowly while stroking his chin. No matter whose idea this guy stood up for, we formed a grudge. There's no explanation for this matter, so we'll have to trouble Uncle Qi in the future. Hearing Qi Song and his son's words, and Zhang Wu's eyes narrowed. He had put in a lot of effort to come here, but now it was ruined by Jiang Hai. It would be strange if he was willing to let it go. Of course it's good for you and me to pull Qi Li down. The Qi Li group will belong to me and Qi Li will belong to you. Everyone will be happy. Hearing in Zhang Wu's words, Qi Liangkai smiled and put his arm around Zhang Wu's shoulder. Although Zhang Wu's mouth was smiling, his eyes flashed a sharp light. The Qi family will belong to them? This was just an idea. Why do you say everything to others? When the two families left, Qi Li couldn't help but punch Jiang Hai's arm and said to Jiang Hai with a reproachful face. This guy didn't realize it before, so why did he talk so much? Ahem, can't I just say it? Am I not helping you? With an awkward smile, Jiang Hai whispered in a low voice. You. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Qi Li was even more embarrassed and angry. Looking at Jiang Hai and Qi Li's quarrel, Qi Li's mother smiled. Okay, stop fooling around. It's good that these two families left. I'm not happy to see them. Okay, I'll go to the kitchen and take a look. You can rest first. Which woman wouldn't love her own daughter? In particular, Qi Li was her eldest daughter. When it came to feelings, she had the deepest feelings for Qi Li. All these years she had always been considerate of Qi Li. It could be said that she had never done anything wrong to Qi Li. There was only one thing that she didn't do, and that was Qi Li's marriage. Because of the situation at that time, the Qi family couldn't fall into the hands of Qi Li or other people, so she made a decision arbitrarily and asked Qi Li to marry Jiang Hai. She could feel Qi Li's grievances when she got married, because in her opinion, Jiang Hai was not a qualified husband. Most importantly, Qi Li didn't love her. All these years, whenever she looked at Qi Li, she would feel guilty. However, now it seemed that Qi Li and Jiang Hai had a good relationship, which was what she wanted to see the most. After greeting Qi Li and Jiang Hai, Qi Li's mother went to the kitchen. Of course, Jiang Hai brought back the beef with her. To be honest, Qi Li's mother didn't think that Jiang Hai could raise a good cow, but she accepted it as a gift from her child. However, the beef gave her a big surprise in the future. However, after Qi Li's mother left, there was a little awkwardness between Jiang Hai and Qi Li. Because the two didn't know what to say now, it seemed that they really didn't have anything in common. Phew, it's really a lot more spacious here. Can we watch TV? Jiang Hai sighed and said to Qi Li as he looked at the originally crowded living room that was filled with the smell of gunpowder. At this time, the living room had become a lot more deserted. Here. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Qi Li also took the remote control of the TV and handed it to Jiang Hai. I usually watch 3D TV. Now that I'm suddenly watching a flat screen, I'm really not used to it. Is there anything good to watch in our country recently? After turning on the TV, Jiang Hai said while changing the channel. Find it yourself. Do you think I have time to watch TV? Qi Li said coldly as she rolled her eyes at Jiang Hai. Che. Looking at Qi Li casually flipping through magazines, Jiang Hai couldn't help but curl his lips and continue to look. Fortunately, he soon found a movie channel which was now playing an old movie Tang Bo Hu Diao Qiu Xiang. Since Jiang Hai had nothing to do, he sat there happily and watched it. By the way, is your manor in Boston? How big is it? How much did you spend to buy it? Looking at Jiang Hai's interest in watching TV, Qi Li also felt that it was really awkward to just sit here, so after thinking about it, she asked Jiang Hai. My manor is in Boston. Well, it can also be said that it's not in the city of Boston, but in the greater Boston area. Geographically, it should belong to Winthrop. The land area is 11,200 acres. Nearly 10,000 acres of land are grazing areas, and about 1,000 acres of land is a winery. The rest of the land is planted with trees. It's about 2 or 3 acres. It's a small forest. The sea area is 720 square kilometers. My manor cost me almost all my wealth, $280 million. Cuff, why are you asking this? After hearing Qi Li's words, Jiang Hai spoke while watching TV. He has always been very proud of his manor. Such a large piece of land is very valuable. But halfway through, he suddenly remembered that Qi Li seemed to be interested in his manor, so he immediately looked at her vigilantly. $280 million. And it's still in USD. If it's converted, it's 84 billion renminbi. You spent so much money to buy a manor and only bought 10,000 acres. Are you crazy? But when she heard Jiang Hai's words, Qi Li had already shouted. In her opinion, if Jiang Hai was not crazy, then his brain must be flooded with water. Otherwise, who would buy such a manor? At this time, Qi Li's business instincts were almost subconsciously activated. She kept talking to Jiang Hai. I'll calculate it for you. Your 720 square kilometer fishery is worth 100 million at most. If you take out this 100 million, you'll still have $180 million. The manor has 11,200 acres, which means that the average price of an acre of land is $16,071. Have you checked the price of land in the United States? It's $300 to $400 per acre in Mexico. Even the most expensive land in California can only be sold for $3,000 to $4,000 per acre, not to mention Texas and Montana. With this $180 million, you can at least buy a farm of more than 100,000 acres, and that's only if you pick a place. You can buy a farm of 10,000 acres right now. Cough, isn't that Boston? It's a metropolitan area. Although Jiang Hai had a rough idea in his heart that this price was a bit of a scam, he didn't know it back then, did he? He checked on the internet and found that land prices in the central and western parts of the United States were cheap, while those in the east were more expensive. The land prices in the Boston area were also very expensive because of the close proximity of the city. That was why he bought it. But after a long time, he learned that the manor did not seem to be calculated in this way. Later, Jiang Hai also secretly calculated that his sea was probably not worth $100 million. After all, there were still aquatic products in the sea for several years. So even if it was valued at $120 million, the land on the land was valued at 60 to 80 million at most. That was to say, the manor was worth 200 million at most. In the end, he spent 80 million more. It was a bit of a scam, but he had signed the contract. Both parties were willing, so he couldn't say anything. If they really got into a dispute, he was afraid that the background of his baby would be dug out. After all, some things couldn't be exposed. What's wrong with a metropolitan area? Don't other places have metropolitan areas? If you bought New York State for 280 million, I wouldn't say anything, but you bought Boston. Whether it's Los Angeles, Chicago, Washington, or even Houston and Dallas, they are all more prosperous than this place. Hearing that Jiang Hai still dared to talk back, Qi Li raised her eyebrows and said with a serious face. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai could only be quiet for the time being except for touching his head embarrassedly. After Qi Li finished speaking, she looked at Jiang Hai's appearance of going in one ear and out the other. She couldn't help but want to bite him. This guy is really annoying. But when she thought that she was dumped by this guy, she was even more unconvinced. The atmosphere between the two seemed to have returned to below the freezing point. Jiang Hai continued to watch TV, and Qi Li impatiently flipped through some magazines on the table. But fortunately, Qi Li's mother came back soon, and the family had a good lunch. After lunch, the three of them watched TV in the living room. In fact, it was mainly Qi Li who chatted with her mother. They talked until the evening. After dinner, the two also left. Jiang Hai and Qi Li were not a real couple now. To be exact, even when they were a real couple, they had not slept together. At this time, the two were not ready to break this silent scene. If they lived here, they would have to live together, which was also what the two were unwilling to do. So in the end, Jiang Hai still said that he had something to do tomorrow. After dinner, he was ready to go back to his home. I'll send you. When Jiang Hai left the door of Qi Li's villa, Qi Li on the other side had already driven a car and parked in front of Jiang Hai. Hearing Qi Li's words, Jiang Hai was not polite. He had helped her a lot today. Your performance today was not bad. But when they got in the car, the two were silent again because they really didn't know what to say. Jiang Hai's character was originally very open, but in front of Qi Li, he was somewhat unable to be open. Oh, if your performance was not bad, then remember to sign that agreement. Looking at the night scene outside the window, Jiang Hai heard Qi Li's words and said directly without even thinking about it. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Qi Li's body couldn't help but tremble, and then she whispered in a low voice, "You want me to sign it so much?" What? Maybe it was because Qi Li's voice was too soft, or because Jiang Hai didn't hear it clearly. After Qi Li's voice fell, Jiang Hai reacted and asked with some doubts. Nothing. I want to tell you that agreement. I won't sign it. Shaking her head, Qi Li threw out the unrealistic thoughts in her mind, and her voice instantly returned to coldness as she said to Jiang Hai. What? Didn't you say that if I helped you today you would sign it? Hearing that Qi Li actually didn't sign it, Jiang Hai's face was gloomy. He didn't understand what a woman's heart was, and he didn't have the intention to understand. He only knew that this woman seemed to be playing with him. I just said that I would think about it, but I didn't say that I would definitely sign it. Don't worry, I have no interest in your manner, but we can't divorce yet. After pondering for a moment, Qi Li raised her head and said in a stable voice. Why can't you divorce? You have control of the company now. What difference does it make whether you have a burden like me or not? Looking at Qi Li, Jiang Hai had been busy all day. His central thought was to settle things with Qi Li as soon as possible. What was this now? Today, Qi Song and his son brought in Zhang Wu over, which means that they have already formed an alliance. Although the Yin family has been dealt a blow by me this year, it is still far from the point of breaking their bones. And now that Zhang Wu has come over, it is sufficient to show that they are already serious. However, our company still has a mole that cannot be eliminated, Qi Song's family. I still need your name to stabilize the situation. Looking at Jiang Hai, Qi Li said with a serious face. Only she knew how trustworthy her words were. However, these words were enough to deceive Jiang Hai, a person who didn't know how to do business or politics. I don't care about your company. I just came here today. Fine, don't you want my manor? I'll give you half of my manor. I don't want it anymore. Stop the car, I'm here. Now Jiang Hai didn't want to listen to Qi Li's nonsense. He only knew that he was in a bad mood, so he patted the car door and said to Qi Li. Hearing Jiang Hai's slightly irritable words, Qi Li didn't refute anything. Instead, she directly stepped on the brakes and sat in the driver's seat. Jiang Hai also unfastened his seat belt and got out of the car. Although there was a cold north wind outside, even so, he didn't want to stay by that woman's side anymore. Does this woman have any credibility? Is she playing with me? If it weren't for the fact that she was a woman, Jiang Hai would have already punched her. Spitting a mouthful of phlegm, Jiang Hai stepped on the crunching snow and walked slowly toward the road ahead. As for Qi Li, she sat in the driver's seat. Looking at the slowly walking Jiang Hai, whose shadow was elongated by the street lights, Qi Li slowly leaned her forehead on the steering wheel. She didn't know why she said such a thing just now. In fact, she knew that it was better for her and Jiang Hai to sign the agreement. It was better for both of them. But she didn't know whether it was because of her pride or because she was unwilling in her heart. She couldn't make up her mind to sign her name. Especially after seeing Jiang Hai today. Originally, she always thought that the relationship between Jiang Hai and herself was just a misunderstanding. But when she saw Jiang Hai and Feng Yunshan at home this morning, her heart felt sad and sour. After spending a day with Jiang Hai, when she sent him home, the first thing he said was to sign her name. At that time, her heart even skipped a beat. She had been in love before. She knew the feeling of being in love. Now was not the feeling, and this was not the feeling of breaking up. She didn't know what this was, but every time Jiang Hai ignored her, it made her feel uncomfortable. She didn't know what kind of mood it was. Looking at Jiang Hai's back gradually moving further and further away until it disappeared, Qi Li continued to lean on the steering wheel. It wasn't until her mother called to ask that she reacted. She opened the window and let the cold wind blow on her face. Her originally empty eyes also recovered some consciousness. Qi Li turned the steering wheel and headed home. Chapter 181. Boss, I don't agree with what you are doing. Listening to the voice of Moses Adams over the phone, Jiang Hai lay on the bed weakly. When he got out of Qi Li's car, it was actually quite far from his home, about 10 kilometers away. Today was New Year's Eve, and there were no taxis on the streets at this time. If it was a good day, 10 kilometers was actually not very far for Jiang Hai. With his physical fitness, he could run there in more than an hour. But today was different. The ground of Ice City was very slippery, and it had been snowing for the past 2 days. It was difficult to walk on the ground, let alone run. He was embarrassed to call his friends. After all, they were also celebrating New Year's Eve at home. So Jiang Hai walked for more than 3 hours before he returned home. Fortunately, he could recognize the north and south. Otherwise, it would be difficult for him to go home. When he got home, even with his strong physical fitness, he was very tired. He took off his clothes and shoes and lay on the bed. But he still remembered what he had to do, which was to apply for a divorce. But as soon as he finished talking to Moses Adams directly voted against it. What? I'd rather give her half of the manor. Although he was very reluctant in his heart, Jiang Hai was now determined. If he didn't make a decision, he would suffer. He now deeply understood the saying, if you don't make a decision, you will suffer. No, this has nothing to do with the manor. I know what you mean, but this has nothing to do with money. Do you still remember the girls in your manor? 8 employees and 2 adopted girls. Hearing Jiang Hai's slightly angry words, Moses Adams said seriously. Hearing what he said, Jiang Hai also calmed down. When you adopted these 2 girls, you approved it because you were married. And those girls, you could only hire them because you were married. If you divorce at this time, then I'll let them down. I'll find better jobs for them. As for Delina and Marion, there's nothing I can do. Hearing Moses Adams's hesitant words, Jiang Hai sighed. This marriage was like a sword hanging over his head. He was completely at a loss. Now, in order to get rid of this sword, even if he had to give up half of his fortune, he would do it. It's not just the problem of these girls staying. Because the time you adopted them is too short, it's easy to be labeled as fraud by those politicians. If you really divorce, the judicial department will intervene and investigate the source of your property. Because your nationality is still Wuxia, you don't have to worry about being put in prison, but you are likely to be sent back to China, and your property in the United States, that is, the manor, will be confiscated. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Moses Adams made it clear. Of course, what he said was only the worst-case scenario, but who could guarantee what would happen in reality? F***ck not giving me a single cent. What should I do now? Hearing what Moses Adams said, Jiang Hai couldn't help swearing. It was said that the barefooted were not afraid of those with shoes. Originally, Jiang Hai was barefooted, but now the problem was that he had already put on shoes. Giving half of his fortune to Chile was already like a knife stabbing his heart. If he didn't have a single cent, then what was the point of living? In fact, this is easy to do. In fact, if you want a divorce now, it's best to find a marriage partner first. After you divorce here, you can get married in the United States immediately. If there is no gap in between, then it won't be very troublesome for us to operate. As expected of a lawyer, he gave Jiang Hai bad ideas. Find someone to marry? With Jiang Hai's brain capacity, there was not a single woman in his mind that was suitable. But this seemed to be the only way at present. Then that's it for now. Wait until I go back. Since he couldn't discuss with Moses Adams, Jiang Hai couldn't help but lean on the bed. His eyes looked at the ceiling, and he began to recall the women who had appeared around him. First, he thought of the women who had slept with him. Maggie was definitely out of the question. The watch girl whose name he didn't know was also out of the question. He didn't even remember her name. As for Feng Yunshin, whom he met after he came back, he was a little moved when he thought of her. But as she said, she wasn't ready to be a partner with Jiang Hai. And with her background, she could be Jiang Hai's lover, but Jiang Hai wouldn't agree to be the legal wife. In addition to the 3 of them, Jiang Hai also knew other women. The 8 women in the manor were definitely not good enough. Although he pitied the birth of these girls, he wasn't going to find a professional one. Daliana and Marion, damn, they were his own girls. He wasn't a demon beast, how could he be a playboy? In addition to these girls, it seemed that there was only one person he knew who could be his marriage partner, Clive. Looking at the white ceiling, he seemed to see Clive's face. Jiang Hai was stunned for a moment. He really didn't think about this before, but now that he thought about it, this girl was really a good partner to be friends with. Thinking about Clive, she had the looks and height, and she was a primary school teacher. In this way, even if he had a child with her in the future, he didn't even need to consider the issue of education. Although he didn't have much contact with her personality, in Jiang Hai's opinion, her personality was also very good. Such a good girl is right beside me, but I didn't notice. Recalling Clive, Jiang Hai chuckled. Originally, Jiang Hai didn't think about it too much, and he didn't pay too much attention to Clive. But now that he thought about it, he really felt that this girl was really good. At least in his opinion, she didn't have any shortcomings. She was full of good points. If he really could marry her, it would be a good choice. Since I've decided to try, how should I pursue her? Originally, Jiang Hai had never thought about this problem. Speaking of which, he had never pursued a girl before. Now that he was suddenly asked to pursue a girl, he didn't know what to do. As he turned on the TV and watched the annual New Year's gala, Jiang Hai picked up his phone. Would it be too abrupt if I call her directly? Why don't I try sending a text message first? Jiang Hai looked at Clive's contact information on his phone. After hesitating for a moment, he sent a greeting first. However, after waiting for a long time, there was no reply. Just as Jiang Hai felt that he was overthinking, his phone rang. "Sorry, I was in class just now. Are you still in Wuxia?" Looking at the newly received text on his phone, Jiang Hai let out a sigh of relief. At this moment, he remembered that although it was already midnight in Wuxia, it was still noon in Boston. "Yeah, I'm still in Wuxia. I hope I didn't disturb your class." Looking at the text message from Shtuani Clive, Jiang Hai hesitated for a moment before replying to her. This time it didn't take long before Shtuani Clive replied. Seeing Shtuani Clive's reply, Jiang Hai immediately typed. However, after all, the two had only met a few times and weren't very familiar with each other. Therefore, after a few sentences, Jiang Hai didn't know what to send. But at this moment, Shtuani Clive sent a message that instantly made Jiang Hai's eyes widen. "Your buddy at the fishing farm had some conflicts with the fishermen in Boston a few days ago. Is everything alright now?" Looking at the message sent by Shtuani Clive, Jiang Hai's eyelids suddenly jumped. There was a conflict? Why didn't I know? When he saw this line of words, Jiang Hai was no longer in the mood to send these things. Instead, he immediately called Edward Anderson. Jiang Hai's manor was jointly managed by him and Robinson Garcia. Robinson Garcia was in charge of the ranch, while Edward Anderson was in charge of the fishing farm. Now that such a thing happened, why didn't he tell me? Beep beep. The phone rang a few times before it was picked up, and then Edward Anderson's voice came from the other side. "Hey boss, did you have fun in Wuxia?" Listening to the rough voice on the other side of the phone, as well as some familiar laughter around him, Jiang Hai temporarily calmed down. It seems that the matter shouldn't be very serious, otherwise they wouldn't have the leisure to do this. "I heard that you had a conflict with the people in Boston. What's going on?" At the moment, Jiang Hai was not in the mood to chat with Edward Anderson. Although he knew that these people might be fine, Jiang Hai still asked him. "Hey, it's not a big deal. When Minluan and Andrew were patrolling, they found fish thieves. After we fired a warning shot, they actually dared to fight back. We sailed a boat over to chase their boat away. In the end, when these people were hiding, one of them fell into the sea and was bitten by the shark you raised." Hearing Jiang Hai's question, Edward Anderson began to talk. In fact, it was easy to understand. There were fish in Jiang Hai's fishing farm, and the fishermen nearby knew this. If there were only him and Edward Anderson in Jiang Hai's fishing ground, it's possible that these fishermen would have some ideas. After all, those fishermen were all greenbacks. No one would go against money. As for the violation of private property, as long as they weren't caught, it wasn't considered a violation. Even if they were caught, they could just say that they were fishing on the high seas and went the wrong way. No one could do anything about it. Edward and the others had done the same thing before. But now it was different. Jiang Hai's fishing farm not only had him and Edward, but also recruited Tommy Charles, Eleanor Cece, Andrew Christian, and Marin Rupert. Now they had enough manpower on their side. Although the helicopter was not in place yet, the normal daily patrol was indispensable. Generally speaking, when someone came to steal fish, they would leave on their own when they saw these people. After all, if there was a conflict, they would be in trouble. But this time, those who stole fish were not ordinary fishermen. Chapter 182. Where there are people, there will be underworld. Where there are underworld, there will be fights. There will always be some people who are unwilling to live by the rules. They are more willing to plunder other people's resources to support themselves. The people with the most power will become a country, and the people with the least power will be called the Black Zone. The United States, as a capitalist country, is the most powerful country in the world. Naturally, there are many black zones, and Boston is one of them. Jiang Hai came at a good time. In recent years, the United States has been changing its image in the world. Therefore, the black zones and racial discrimination are very strict. But no matter how strict the crackdown is, there will still be some lawbreakers who don't take these laws seriously. Most people in the Boston area are descendants of Irish. Everyone knows that the Irish are actually a very complicated people. Because Northern Ireland was occupied by the British, most of the Northern Irish people don't think of themselves as British. Although their household registration is in the United Kingdom, their hearts are more towards Ireland. Such racial sentiments can't be vented in Europe, but in the United States, the racial discrimination they bring is quite serious. It even formed almost half of Boston's black zone. In Boston, the Northern District has always been the place where the rich live. The air there is fresh, the sun there is bright, and the police there are paid a high salary. They patrol the streets every day. Even if the roads in the main city of Boston are narrow and small, they are still happy to do it. But compared to the northern district, the southern district is hell. Dirty and chaotic is the standard of the southern district. Chaos is the code name of the southern district, just like the Bronx in New York. It's not that there are no good people here, but there are too many bad people. Here, robbing, stealing, murdering, raping, and even organizing organizations to sell and sell things like that were happening all the time. In fact, when Jiang Hai rescued those girls last time, he had already entered the territory of the southern district. It was just the border area. If it was some deeper area, even the police will think twice. However, in the past few years, under the crackdown of the American government, these underworld organizations had been restrained a lot. Many of their leaders had disappeared from the world after being targeted by the FBI. However, this was how the world worked. When one person fell, another would stand up to replace him. It was the same in the southern district. This time, the people who came to Jiang Hai's manor to steal fish were some gangsters from the southern district. The matter was actually very simple. A group of people stole fish and even took the initiative to open fire. In the end, they fell into the water and were bitten by a shark. They could only blame themselves for being unlucky. However, it was impossible to reason with these hoodlums and talk about the law. They thought that they had lost face here, so they had to get it back here. Therefore, after those people were taken away by the Winthrop police, there were always some strangers driving around Jiang Hai's manor in recent days. According to Robbins and AI Dehua, these people might be from the gang who wanted to find trouble with Jiang Hai. However, these cowboys and fishermen in Jiang Hai's manor were not to be trifled with, especially with Bell. Don't forget that he was from the Triangular State. To deal with these unorthodox people, his long gun was enough to make them suffer. It was precisely because of this that Robbins and AI Dehua were not very worried. Be careful these days. I will go back early. I will be worried if I stay here all the time. Hearing AI Dehua's words, Jiang Hai hesitated and sighed. Things really came as soon as he left. These guys really knew how to find trouble. Originally he was going to go back after the 15th, but now it seemed that he had to go ahead of time. However, as Robbins and AI Dehua said, with Bell and the others, Jiang Hai did not have to worry too much. At least, it was not a problem to stay in Wuxia for a few more days. Perhaps he felt that Jiang Hai's mood was not very good, so AI Dehua specifically reported the situation in the manor. At present, the bait in the manor was almost complete. During the days when Jiang Hai was gone, the weather was gradually getting warmer. This was the good thing about Boston. During the coldest time, the highest temperature during the day was above zero. In recent days, with the southeast monsoon blowing, the manor ski field had melted a little. Robbins and the others were now working hard to clear the snow. As for the cleared snow, they just pushed it directly into the sea. The cleared grassland could allow the 20,000 cows that had been held in for 2 months to come out and take a breather. As for the vegetable garden, it had already been cleaned up. At present, Mrs. Philemon was leading a group of young ladies in the manor to carry out the spring sowing. Although the people in the United States didn't eat much vegetables, they had already planted some vegetables such as cucumbers, pumpkins, cabbages, chili peppers, and eggplants. With more people coming this year, and with the automatic mechanization of the sowing process, Jiang Hai's vegetable garden had expanded to 2 acres, which was 12 acres. Even if the population doubled this time, the vegetables produced this time would be enough to supply them for a year. Hearing these 2 pieces of good news, Jiang Hai's mood finally improved. After hanging up the phone, he leaned against the headboard and thought about his manor. Compared to the manor, Jiang Hai temporarily put the news about Sheikh Clive to the back of his mind. While watching the Spring Festival Gala that was no longer interesting, Jiang Hai's thoughts had drifted back to his manor. A few days ago when he had something to do, he did not feel anything. Now that he was suddenly free, Jiang Hai really missed the people in his manor. Robbins, AI Dehua, Philemon, Delina, Marion. Unknowingly, so many people had gathered around him. These people had to rely on him to live. This feeling of being relied on was something that Jiang Hai had never experienced before. Because to be exact, since he was young, he had always relied on others to live. Now that he was suddenly relied on by others, the feeling of being needed by others really made him feel a little warm. Especially when he thought of his pets, Xiaobai, Goldie, Bucktooth, Chirp, Little Xia, and Big Dumb, he could not help but smile. He recalled how Xiaobai always surrounded him and waved its eyebrows mischievously, how Goldie looked cold and arrogant as it observed the surroundings, how Bucktooth was like a knight, often somersaulting on top of Xiaobai's head, how Chirp could not fly yet, it only knew how to run all over the place, how Little Xia had a special liking for carrots. Every time he fed it, it would lick his hand. There was also the fierce-looking Big Dumb. But this time Big Dumb helped him vent his anger. I'll reward him with a drop of blood when I go back. Thinking of Big Dumb, Jiang Hai could not help but chuckle softly. He was really looking forward to it. If he gave this guy another drop of blood, would this guy turn into a great white shark? However, when he thought of blood, Jiang Hai could not help but think of the tattoo on his body. Since leaving the manor, the number of scales on his tattoo had become fewer and fewer. When he was in New York, there was only one scale. When he returned home, there was only an increase of half a scale every day. It seemed that the environmental factors between the two really played a big role. However, when he glanced at the scales that had already grown to the snake's buttocks, which were the scales on the snake's tail, he realized that there were about 100 more scales before he could reach the full scale. By the time he returned, it would be almost done by March. After looking forward to it for so long, his gold finger was finally going to be upgraded. Bang bang bang. Bang 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 bang. Just as Jiang Hai was still lost in thought, there was a sudden loud noise that shook even the glass from a distance. It also woke Jiang Hai up from his contemplation. When he looked up, he found that it was almost 12 o'clock. The sound of firecrackers reverberated around him, making him no longer in the mood to meditate. Neutralizing all the bad news with good news, my mood is a lot better. With a long sigh, Jiang Hai laughed at himself. As the 12 o'clock countdown ended on the TV, Jiang Hai's cell phone also rang. New Year's greetings text messages entered Jiang Hai's cell phone. He casually looked at the messages on his cell phone. Most of them were from his friends, and there were some exceptions, but there were only two. One was from Feng Yunshin, who stayed here last night, and the other was from Moses Adams. It seemed that this Moses Adams was indeed a wonderful person. He even knew the rules of Wuxia. He deliberately sent a New Year's greeting text message in Chinese, which made Jiang Hai's heart warm. Of course, Jiang Hai would not know that this text message was actually sent by Penelope Dahl on behalf of Moses Adams. Since they parted at the police station that day, Jiang Hai really had not seen this woman again. Recalling the bits and pieces of his year, Jiang Hai no longer felt sad. This was not his style. Turning on the lights in the square hall, Jiang Hai then turned off the phone. With the sound of firecrackers outside, Jiang Hai also officially fell asleep. In the dream, he seemed to have returned to his childhood. At that time, his parents were there. Every New Year, his mother would make dumplings in the kitchen, and he and his father would go downstairs to set off firecrackers. Fireworks, colorful patterns, and the sound of explosions constantly echoed in his ears and dreams. Unknowingly, when a new round of sunrise reappeared on the horizon, the new year had officially arrived. Before he woke up, the phone rang in his ear. Jiang Hai felt for the phone in a daze. He looked up and saw that it was Fu Yuan. Only he would get up so early. What's the matter? Jiang Hai was sleeping well and was suddenly awakened. It was good enough that he did not scold him. His tone was naturally unkind. But Fu Yuan did not care at all. Stop sleeping. We are downstairs at your house. Let's go to my house to play. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.